Okay, welcome in, folks. DL is about to be up in a second here. He's just doing his intro, so I'm going to give him time for that. And then him and I are ready to start the stream here. So a couple of just more minutes, and we'll just hang out till that happens. So hopefully we got the folks coming in here. I think it should be a fun stream for everybody. Shah in the building. Okay. So if you hear DL's intro, let me know. I'll try to quiet it down, but it should be okay. We should be okay. So we're gonna have a fun one tonight, guys. We're gonna have a good time. This is kind of new, so you know, it's a last minute collab stream. So hopefully there's no technical issues, but I hope everybody's okay. And guys, just be advised, if I can't get to the chats, like, you know, I normally try to do a really good job of just answering everybody's chats and reading them out loud. But since I'm going to be talking with DL, I don't want to cut the flow of our discussion, basically. Let me make sure so I might bring him up on screen as I'm doing the stream, just so I can give you guys some shine. And for super chats, if I can't get to them immediately, I'll definitely try to hit those up before the show's done. So please let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me okay. Just a couple more minutes, guys. No song intro today, by the way. I can hear DL's intro in my ears, so it's kind of like getting in the way of my... Good evening. Yo, Klaus, welcome in, bro. We're going to have a fun one today, man. I'm going to be here with DL Saint. And he's just doing his intro. Probably be about a couple more minutes, and then we're going to get right into it. Audio is perfect. Excellent. Yeah, just waiting for DL to pop back up here. Audio's fine. Perfect. JP, man, it's a pleasure to see you, Klaus. We can finally... I mean, I was afraid to get the show started without Klaus, but now that he's here, we can hear you. Awesome. Yo, Don DeMarco, shout out to you, man. Oh, does my sound effect work? Okay, perfect. Okay, got my headphones low. Guys, when the video starts, like that we're reacting to, if it's too loud, let me know. I'm probably going to have to use my master volume to put it down, or at least for my computer. So... you know, that's the only thing I'm afraid of is audio issues. But other than that, we should be okay. DL's intro still going. Hope everybody's been okay, man. I've just been chilling. I've been into cassette tapes lately. And I spent like a lot of the day trying to record myself on a cassette recorder and making it sound half decent, because I'm hoping to post YouTube videos with it, but we'll see how that goes. I feel weird not playing the music starting out, guys, so apologize for that. Also, I hope everybody watched my discussion with Effective Purpose. I thought that was really good, and I appreciated the comments below the video. I think it started some good discussion there. Looks like DL should be coming up here soon. Yo, Oikophobic, good to see you. $30 more seconds on DL's intro. We're going to get this started. Effective Purpose was great. Thank you, man. Yeah, I got great feedback from people for whoever watched it. They said they really appreciated it. I know Mr. Pitt did. So that was a really good thing. This will be awesome too. All right, here we go.
Podcast, man. Y'all know we just trying to show some love to our people out there. Shout out to Lost in Translation. Yo, that's my man, 100 grand doing his thing. Just checking the audio. Audio's good. We still got the intro and outro and all that good stuff, Gabbo. I'm just trying to help my man out. And we also have the man, the myth, the legend himself in the building. This is Shaw, y'all, is in the house. What's happening, fam? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. Thanks for having me back, DL. You're one of the first. You're one of the first collabs I ever did, man. I remember when you reached out to me. So when I saw you hit me up today, I was like, man, I gotta do it. I gotta do it.
Man, I appreciate it because you blowing it up out there, bro. I gotta tell you, man, you are doing really good work, man. Like I'm really digging like your growth, man. And I told you back then, like you the man. I just like it just your background and I didn't know where, you know what I mean? Because you have a very unique skill set, bro. And so what are you doing now, man? Like what's actually going on, bro? You still where you used to live? You move around? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm still where I used to live, man. I started a new job. I kind of been a little quiet about that lately, but it's not unlike what I did before, but in a different type of it's a little similar but different, and it's been a lot to learn. So I'm real solid and set in there now, and I've got past all the training and stuff like that, and I'm just grateful to be able to put some bandwidth back on my YouTube because I've been kind of laying low for a little bit. I've been doing all the collabs, and anybody who reached out to me, been trying to do my weekly streams. But other than that, just been doing that, and I'm just ready to look back at YouTube and try to make more standalone videos and dedicate more time to it.
I ain't mad at you. I'm the same way here. I'm still retired. My thing is 2026. I really want to make a push on social media, because I look at it, I look at my analytics, and up until this point, I'm like, oh, I'm just having fun. I'm doing stuff. I chalked it up to, I got too close to some of the, the naughty boys in the YouTube world. But I'm looking at my analytics and like, nah, man, my stuff is way too low. So let me make a legit push. So, we're doing the Gumroad, we're doing the ebooks, we're doing on-demand videos, about to start our locals, going crazy with it. And then, like a night like tonight, man, I ain't gonna lie, man. Thank you so much for doing this. This is gonna be fun because this debate, when I watched this debate, man, your name was the first name that popped into my head. I'm like, bro, I wonder if Shaw's watching this.
Yeah, I appreciate that you told me about it. I didn't actually know. So this will be my first watch through, which should be fun for the audience. Looking at it though, it looks like a similar conversation to Andrew Wilson and Coach Greg Adams. That one I reacted to, and me and the audience listened to that. So this seems like kind of a part two. And my guess is this might have been brought on by that whole Sarah Stock controversy that was big on Twitter. So maybe it reignited some of these old
could have been
discussions.
Yeah, could have been. I think Rattlesnake, which I don't really like, I don't know who he is. I could look and tell he's like real conservative. Mm-hmm. I think he just wanted to have this conversation and make it a debate. But this is gonna be good, guys. So we're sitting here just chopping it up, man, catching up. But we're about to get into it right now, man. So we're just gonna roll the intro real quick and let's get into it. And we are live. What's good, y'all? Welcome to the I Really Want to Know podcast, y'all. Get some indeed, man. So yeah, bro, when we update the intro, bro, you definitely gonna be in that one.
Heck yeah.
Like, I gotta get you in that one, man. But yeah, man, so I got it loaded up. So we're gonna talk about this Andrew Wilson, Rich Cooper debate. I mean, I like having conversations. The whole debate thing is just beyond me, bro. But this is what people want to do. This is what they want to say, because it's not really a debate, is it? It's a you know what I mean? It could be a good conversation or a spicy argument, but it's not like you got two minutes. We're gonna talk about this, and you can study. It's not that. But Andrew Wilson is kind of building a platform on this debate thing, and then to have Rich Cooper on the other side, just the stoic, what I'm saying, like warrior on the other end of this, the unplugged alpha himself, Mr. Entrepreneur and Cars. I'm like, okay, I want to see how this plays out, man. So, and you haven't seen it, so this is going to be great. Mm-hmm. It is a long one, but I know, you like, screw it. Sometimes
it's a Saturday night, we'll go as long as we can. So
exactly. So let's do it. I'll pull it up right here. And here we
Yeah.
go. So we'll just start it off, and I'm telling you, it's good for like from minute 25 until about an hour and a half mark is I think the
Mm.
best, and then it kind of you'll see what I mean when we watch this, but
Yeah, no worries.
it's I can't
I'll
wait to hear
try
what you
not
have to
to
say
make you
about this.
pause it too much. Like, on my channel, I definitely like to sometimes it takes me a while to get through stuff, but
So here we go. Let's get
we'll
into it.
be good.
Is a contentious issue, one that is
Pause.
appeal to the moderator. If you feel like the other
And
person
I
is talking too
apologize in
much,
advance for
over
any
talking
lag,
these sorts of
guys. If there's any
things,
lag, it's not Shaw, it's
if
me.
there is any filibustering going on, we will also have some moderator intervention. Any personal attacks, there will also be intervention from yours truly. So, guys, we're going to have 5 minutes each on the clock for our opening statements. But before we get there, if you guys don't mind both introducing yourself, that would be great. Starting with you, Andrew.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Wilson. I'm the host of The Crucible. I've been doing debates for many, many years on a wide variety of issues, mostly in the political domain. I largely do consider this to be a political issue. I'm sure my opponent does as well. So that's who I am, and that's what I do.
And Rich?
Yeah, Rich Cooper. Got a few YouTube channels. Been doing this for about 10 odd years. Entrepreneurs in Cars was the main one. Started doing some podcasting on the Unplugged Alpha after the release of the first book, and did a follow up a few months ago on a second book. So first debate for me. I don't normally do debates, so it looks like I'm up against a champ today. We'll see how it goes.
We will see how it goes. Perfect. Well, yeah, you guys have both been on the channel before, both friends of the channel. Looking forward to this topic. We're going to be doing 5 minutes opening statements, and then we'll be doing around about an hour to 90 minutes, depending on how much time you guys have got of open dialogue. And then we're going to be reading about a few super chat questions from the audience. So with that, Andrew, do you want to go first with your 5 minute opening statement?
I can go first.
Awesome.
First, I'd like to thank my opponent for reaching out, coming out to the debate. I appreciate that very much. I do think that this is a critical issue. And TradCons have been quite a bit pussies on engaging in it, which is annoying to me, but I'm always happy to do so. It's an interesting phenomenon when you get two men together who agree on many, many things, but disagree on some core issues. So kind of the audience is now in a position to see a clash of ideas and make up their own mind. That's what the point is. In this particular case, we're diving into if marriage in the West is good for men. For the Christian ethicist, in this case me, this is a tough topic to navigate because it's full of nuance and the ideas have to be scrutinized through a lens of non-Christians. And you have to do that so that they'll understand where you're coming from. And I need to do it in a way that still supports the Christian view. Many people have trouble with nuance because they take critical thinking about a position as the adoption of the position itself. This is mostly just due to the fact that many people are fucking stupid. And there isn't anything I can do about that, so I don't even try. Instead, I want to meet them where they are and criticize the portions of the ideology I think are incorrect and allow them to do the same. In the case of Mr. Cooper, we will tangle on this core idea. Is marriage worth it or not? That's what it's going to come down to. And to explore Mr. Cooper's view on this, I've taken some time to review a lot of his content. I haven't read his entire book, but I have read many excerpts from it. And so, of course, I'm not going to be able to glean all the insights. I just didn't have time to read it. But here's what I got of his basic view. His view is totally rational, according to both his book and online videos. Essentially, the view is that the risk of marriage is due to the overlapping of the state, and in the view of a contract, it's a really bad deal for men. Because marriage is a contract with the state, and the state is seemingly biased against men, men have a lot to lose when it comes to assets and their most important asset, which is their children, to rulings which are unfair to the man when it comes to divorces. This is mostly true, and you're not going to get any argument from me on this. Further, he expands that the chances of divorce are very high. He cites 50% in many cases, but it's actually closer to 40, at least for first-time marriages. But in the spirit of good faith, I'm also going to kind of concede that that's pretty damn high. So another point of concession there. The rub comes in when we start to dive into these numbers, as they're actually very deceptive. Let me give you an example of why we have to be cautious on this. An off
Yo, real quick before he goes into the numbers, man, where are you, Shaw, on this whole thing? Because I'm tell you right now, I'm more of a marriage is a bad contract guy. You know what I mean? It's a bad contract for somebody. And it's to me, it's not necessarily the dude, it's the person who has less. So whoever has more money, more assets going into this contract is gonna lose, be it male or female. And I just think that it's time for America to at least here in America, we got to rethink what's going on with these marriage laws and family court in general. What's your take going in?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would say the way we do marriage and the cultural expectations around it, which is typically man provider, leads to a bad deal for men. And, Andrew's already pointed out here that at least Rich's position involves the state, or at least one of the biggest reasons why he thinks it's a bad deal for men is because, you're getting the state involved. And if you're doing this simultaneously with our, prevailing understandings of masculinity of men being providers, typically that puts the man in the position to have more, to be investing more materially and financially into the marriage. So it's a bad deal that way. So personally, myself, I think I have something in me where I'm always trying to look at a bit more optimistic about marriage specifically. In general, the idea that the state contract and the expectations around how we go about that and engage in that contract, I think, is a terrible deal for men specifically. I do think marriage is a positive thing as opposed to, kind of being out there and being with the new woman every day. I think that is a high risk lifestyle in its own way, So for me, when it comes to the state, like I agree with Rich, all that stuff is bad. But one thing, I noticed, especially with trad cons, or like I was reacting to Matt Walsh the other day, and they never make this delineation between if they're talking about, maybe a marriage in a religious sense only without the state, or if they're talking about the state and everything altogether. So with the state, bad deal for sure.
For sure. Yeah, and I'm with you on that because I'm not anti-relationship. It's just when I had this conversation with women, mostly women who've been through divorce, and mostly women who benefited from said divorce, I'm like, it's a bad deal.
Yeah, and
You know,
the other thing too that you pointed out, like it's not necessarily a gender thing. It's just who's bringing in more money into the, and I could tell you as someone who's worked in that, um, you know, well, I guess you can call it an industry.
it
Um,
is.
is that, the laws aren't specifically gendered, but it's about who was the supporting party, and that creates certain expectations. So that's why I'm so interested in looking at how marriage was done historically and what was different about how we do it today, because there's some things there that most people wouldn't, you know, believe, basically. That's why I look at the dowry system and stuff so much.
Oh yeah, something like that. Yeah, you bring back the dowry system. If you bring back some sort of hybrid of how it used to be
Mhm.
versus some sort of modern take on it, but you bring into where the family of the wife to be has to check in some money that changed the game
That's the thing.
completely.
Yeah, because men right now are living under what's kind of sold to men as the idea of masculinity is that you bring every single penny to that marriage. That is the expectation as provider. So somehow they gaslit you to even believe that the establishment of the household at the onset of the marriage is completely your responsibility. But it never used to be that way because the woman's side would invest a large amount of money into the establishment of the household. Once you got that, then you would start to act in the role of provider and all these kinds of
Protector.
things. Exactly. So
Huh.
so yeah, so that's where I'm at on that. So as far as the way our laws are, yeah, they're not gendered, but when you mix that with cultural expectations of masculinity, with man being this 100% provider, and this is all wrapped in with things like chivalry and our current understanding of masculinity, it starts to become a very horrible deal.
A very bad deal. And again, I brought up that thing about the gender neutral take that the court has because
Mhm.
so many women are coming out doing better now. And
Yeah.
women are going into family court believing, oh, I'm about to do this and do that. And they come out of there so upset. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm playing alimony. He's taking half of my Birkin
That
collection. He didn't even wear them shoes.
That's the important thing. So it's like this question is marriage worth it for men? Where I fall on this, well, is it largely depends on the deal you negotiate. as far as what marriage you take. And
Good
this
point.
was a mindset that people had for thousands of years when you went into a marriage, as you were bargaining. So it really is a bargain in the sense that you're going in there and you're deal making. But when it comes to romance and the love match and how we do things now, the bargaining aspect, especially for the man's side, goes out the window. And it's more so the women who are allowed, or culturally expected to look at you and say, okay, does he make enough or whatever? But from the man side, what she bringing, they're gonna attack your masculinity if you come in with that mindset.
Exactly. So cool. So I just wanted to get, before we got into this, because I think I know where you are, but now I know for certain. So let's continue.
Cited reference by the manosphere is that while it's true, men are most of the workplace fatalities which happen in the USA, especially the total, these fatalities are quite low. You'll hear feminists talk about this as well. That's kind of an overlap that they have, at least in totality. But the reason why this is important is because when we break down the fields in which men are actually dying, the majority of them are in construction, logging, and fishing. So if you wanted to mitigate risk when it came to work, for instance, you would probably tell men not to avoid working in jobs which are physically perilous, but to avoid working in specific jobs which are very perilous, because those are where you're going to incur the most amount of risk of death. Which means in order to avoid these risks in the workplace and serious injury, these fields are likely best avoided. And that's how you would do risk mitigation in marriage. It's no different. There are high risk groups and there's low risk groups. The Amish, for instance, have an almost zero divorce rate. You heard that right, zero. You can source this from Amish studies at Elizabethtown College, with researchers confirming this. Mennonites are about 1%, Mormons 18%, same with Catholics, Orthodox Christians even less than that, 11% to 12%. Muslims very low as well. Atheists surprisingly have only an 11% chance, but that's because they basically avoid marriage and get married very late in life. Christians in name only, or what are considered nominal Christians, these are people who don't go to church, they don't really do much in the way of religious practices, actually have a much higher percentage rate of getting divorced because of the self-ID. And there basically isn't anything to distinguish them from secularists or agnostics, and that's why those numbers are so high. When broken down by group, it gets even more low the more religious you are, and if you add a prenup to it, the risk becomes almost non-existent for most people. Suddenly, the threat of divorce seems actually quite low, depending on the group you're a part of.
Can you
While
pause
I
it
would
here?
suppose you wouldn't want to be part of the 17 or 18%.
I definitely I can hear what he's saying, but I think he's selling it a little bit too hard about your risk becoming, almost zero. Amish especially, they specifically live around this idea of not adopting certain technologies and stuff. Now, I don't know. I've never met any Amish or been there. Maybe they all have iPhones now or something.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah, but I can understand his argument about risk mitigation. I think Matt Walsh tends to come off that way. He'll say, yeah, it's almost 50%. But it also, depends on who you select for. I think the other side of that coin is you select for a certain thing and they might actually be that thing at the time of marriage. But as marriage develops, one side of the equation can completely change their entire belief system and value system. And then suddenly you're married to somebody else. They may not have been a feminist at the beginning. But later on, after 15 years, they decided that's what they're going to do now. So it's very hard to spot that. I think Andrew would disagree with me. Matt Walsh, for instance, it's kind of funny because Pearl was reacting about this whole Sarah Stock thing. And Matt Walsh in his most recent video said, well, you got to be able to spot these kinds of things before you get married and all this kind of stuff. And it was funny to Pearl because when Sarah Stock had posted this picture of her ring and saying, I won, she was the only one who kind of sensed something was wrong, but everybody else came to her defense. So she was like, Matt, if you couldn't spot that, like how are all these guys supposed to spot this? So the issue, it seems like, you can sit here and try to mitigate for all these things, but at the end of the day, the deal is still lopsided and bad because you're still bringing in everything and investing everything and leveraging everything, where this person is not, and you have the sort of Damocles above you where they have this option to leave.
They do. And the trad cons and the religious folks, to come up and say, well, we can fix this problem just with faith. And it was like, faith ain't gonna save you in the court of law in the United States. It's like, well, like even the Amish are US citizens. If you had a woman or a young girl who's in a situation and you know what, she's like, I'm tired of it, and she can somehow get away from the village or whatever, get her hands on an iPhone or Android and call 911. They're gonna come get her out of there. She's gonna wind up in court. She's gonna be able to get wherever it is she's trying to get.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
yeah, your religion, your faith is not gonna save you. And that's the thing the trad cons keep hammering. I guess what they're saying is, well, if you find a woman who's really religious, you don't have to worry about her using that option. And then folks like myself, probably you, Rich Cooper, saying, what, but she still has that option. Why risk a half to 2/3 of your stuff?
Yeah, and that's why I look at it more from the actual material point of view, in the sense of like, what are the economics of this, of these two people coming together? And I don't disagree. Like, I don't think there isn't a spiritual aspect to this. I think there's definitely a spiritual aspect to marriage that's important, but it always walked hand in hand with an economic aspect. And typically what you'd see people is they would look at the economic aspect first. And once they made a deal there, then they would go over to their, place of worship and get it sanctified or taken care of on the spiritual side of things. So both of these things walked hand in hand with each other to make it work. So what I think Andrew and maybe folks like Matt Walsh are trying to do is say, look at the value system, which are all these intangible qualities in terms of belief systems and stated beliefs and all this kind of thing. Maybe you can look at their family, and I get it. You could probably like, okay, they're good people or whatever. But if you want marriage to be a deal that isn't a bad deal for you, you have to look at it this other way about what are people investing in terms of what's actually real and tangible into this equation. And that's how people
Absolutely.
did it for a long time, and Christian people as well. This was all over Europe and even the Americas for a long time.
I mean, this has gone on, all the way back to when, Cain killed his brother. You know what I mean? It's you go back and you read what the Egyptians were talking about with their problems with marriage and problems
Mhm.
with divorce and all that. And it was a different argument because, you would have a woman who's married and then she messes up, the husband kicks her out the house, and then she comes back home, and the argument there would, the complaints then were, now we got to feed her, we got to take care of her. She had a husband, she screwed it up, and we're stuck with her. Now today is that same woman will walk away and she has a house.
Yeah, there's
You know what I mean? She
a
has a house.
large welfare
Okay.
system. There's subsidized childcare, as we all saw in Minneapolis or Minnesota and all that stuff. There's plenty of stuff
Yeah.
to avail yourself of. Yeah, and the important thing is when you look at marriage anywhere historically, it's important because it involves property and private property. And when you look at legal codes for marriage, this is what it's deciding upon. When you go into court for divorce, yeah, they're not going to mention religion one time. What's going to be on the table is what are the assets of the marriage. You've created this community fund, this conjugal fund. And when you go into a divorce for a dissolution, it's dissolving this fund. Like, that's its primary purpose as far as the courts are looking at it. When you go back throughout history, it is a marriage contract that is centered around property. Even in Hammurabi's code, it looks at what happens when there's a divorce. If this is the situation, then she goes back with her dowry. Hammurabi's code is interesting because it mentions both bride price and dowry in one set of legal codes there. But going all the way through, it's very much concerned with property and property division and whose is what and all these kinds of things. So when you go into the marriage, you have to look at these things too.
You're right. You're right. And I would push back respectfully.
Mhm.
When you go to court, they do mention God. You got your right hand up when they do
Mhm.
mention God, because you got to sit there and swear or affirm.
Yeah, I can see that. What I mean is, like, in the sense
No, I'm
of,
messing with you. I'm with you
yeah,
100%.
if
I'm
you're
just
like,
messing
well,
with you.
my religious book says this, and this is how we're supposed to do divorce, they're going to be like, well, according to the law of the land, this is
Yeah,
how
they're
we're
gonna
going
laugh
to.
at you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's gonna come up in this debate. It's definitely gonna come up. And I remember listening to it, and it's just like, I don't care what religion you subscribe to, what your beliefs are here in America. It's because it's like, well, the church is going to hold these people feet to the fire, and they're gonna make sure that they don't go to the state and get this divorce. I'm like, how are you gonna stop them?
They don't, yeah, they don't have the power to enforce that. Other than through,
Exactly.
like, it would have to be through some kind of non-physical means, like maybe ostracism or shaming or something like that. But that hasn't so far been shown to have too much of an effect.
I mean, think about it. You just got $10 million as a woman in this divorce, and your church is mad at you. They kick you out of the church. You got $10 million. You don't think another church around the corner is going to open the doors and
Yeah,
welcome you
it's
in?
court shopping. I mean, that's what they back during at-fault divorce times. Sometimes when a couple really wanted to get divorced, they would do what was called forum shopping, or court shopping. They would just like, okay, let's go to this jurisdiction, and then one court would develop a reputation for being easier to deal with. And I'm sure it's the same thing with churches. This one might be more willing to give out an annulment than other ones. So
Exact same thing. And that's why California got so Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was like, y'all just come on down here.
Yeah.
We'll get you out of it.
that was in '69. Yeah.
Yep. It's funny that year was 69. That's what probably got them divorced in the first place. Had they done more 69,
Yeah, they might still be together.
Right. They would still be together. All right, let's continue.
Okay.
In these groups, telling men that they have an 80 or 90% chance that their marriage will work out shifts the picture entirely. The breakdown is suddenly far less daunting, and the risk is now much more manageable as far as these categories go. This nuance is often missed in this conversation, but it should be highlighted. Marriage isn't very risky for people in these groups. It's risky for people who are in the secular groups, because those groups map on to the national average almost identically, about 39% to 41%. Give you an example of this: 5 to 10% of people who ever drink alcohol will become alcoholics. That could be argued to be very, very, very high risk, I suppose, but most men look at the risk factor and consider the trade-off acceptable and reasonably low for what they get out of the behavior of socially drinking. So as to the question, is marriage worth it in the West, specifically here in the United States, which is what we're talking about, for many men, yes, and for many men, no. Specifically secular men, it seems to be a big fat no. Their risk is on par with the national average, like I said. And this leads to cohabitation likelihoods, which become much higher, which leads to high risk for abuse for their children, along with other negative outcomes for their family dynamics. And those are the actual facts of the matter. Now, Pat.
Hey, real quick, that part right there, once they outed Andrew's wife's history and what, that horrible tragedy with her son, like losing her son. And it's like, if I were Andrew, I wouldn't bring up that at all. I would stay so far away from that. You talking about, you open the door for abuse to come into the house and all this. I mean, it just, you just, Rich Cooper is going to jump on that, but it's just, he's in such a bad position, man. Well, what's your take on that? When all that information came out about, their history, that whole thing.
Do you mean like his wife having like children from prior relationships or marriages?
Yes, having children from prior relationships, the quote unquote baby daddy phenomenon.
Yeah.
And then also she lost a child, allegedly. She had a child that,
okay.
Yeah.
I
She
see.
had a child that was playing with the neighborhood bad boy, bad kid. Allegedly, it was joy riding in the vehicle. It was an accident, and her son didn't survive. While the father was trying to get more custody of the son because he was worried about his well-being. But again,
really?
That out there.
Wow.
Yeah. That's allegedly.
And the child was in the mother's care and then ended up, a tragedy happening too. And while the father was trying to, so it kind of, I guess in the sense it's showing that someone who's religious also is kind of doing the same thing about, that parental alienation, possibly, if the story is true and all that kind of stuff. I guess when I think about it and I look at it, it just tells me that Andrew is operating from the romantic ethos as far as a choice and marriage goes. And, I don't know if he's selling this idea that, if you go, you're going to find this chaste woman who's, a virgin. And if you guys just stick with the church, that's going to be it. Maybe he is, I'm not sure. But if that is the ideal that they're selling, Sorry, I keep thinking of this Sarah Stock situation because, you know, she lied
Yeah.
about
But
completely.
bro, I mean, even with that situation, that's just humans being humans. I tell it to my friends all the time. You know, you talk about the conservative, like in politics. You talk about
Yeah.
Republicans, how conservative they are. They're all church going. They're all wearing
But
crosses.
what I see from it is that, you know, in order to get this deal of this supposed submissive person and all these things that follows your lead, it's just you have to take a little bit of the bad stuff in some regard somewhere in that equation, as far as
Yeah.
like, if you're going to sell this idea that yes, women are going to follow the man's lead and they're going to do that and they're going to play the role that, you know, we're all grown up to believe, it's like somewhere in that Disney fantasy is some reality in there, and it sounds like that's the reality he had to put up with in accepting that deal with her. You know, conceivably, she can probably still leave him, and it would still be a bad deal and all this kind of stuff. So it's like, even if you go in there and you try to save somebody or give somebody a good deal, they can still screw you over later. My guess is he probably took the deal because they were probably in love, and it was based more on this romantic kind of thing. Instead of other stuff. I don't know what his position was before when he decided to marry her, but to me, you know, like, you know, I worked at a child support office, so it's like I have this very, like, I guess it just doesn't faze me because I've seen so many people in so many situations that are, you know, frankly not good or not ideal, that it's just like, oh yeah, of course, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not even surprised. Like, yeah, of course that's the case. But if you're selling this idea of like purity and that this is what it's going to be, and, you know, this is what you can expect, then, you know, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt and say, no, well, even he himself, you know, has to put up with a bit of the reality pile here. You know what I mean? To come with whatever this fantasy is that you want to live in.
Exactly. And as a professional heathen, I've been a professional heathen my whole life. You know, I was raised in the church and all that. Like that's where I learned so much of my game, is watching things unfold in the church.
Hmm.
You know, so when I hear these stories, like I was saying about the Republicans and the conservative folks, I'm telling you, it's been my experience. Of course, guys, it's just anecdotal. Haven't done a study,
Mhm.
but I'm just here to tell you, man. Like, most of the people who are wearing leather and have gag balls and all kind of crazy stuff, bro, they vote Republican. I'm just saying, man. Like, in the past, a lot of them that I've run into, and they go to church religiously. So
Like, you'd never guess, huh? But then it's just like all of a sudden it's them. It's like the more straight laced they are on the outside, they have like more of these appetites that have been hidden until they become some some weird. I don't want to call it, you know, some kind of thing like that. Basically, gag
right,
balls.
and here's the thing. And my thing is, they're responsible, they're safe, they're adults, they're doing their thing. This is what they like to do. You know, no one's perfect, but it
Yeah.
just that's what when I hear this stuff and it's like, oh, religion is gonna save you. I'm like, it's not, man. I can't tell you how many religious married women have come at me and you don't know they're married. I mean, most
Oh,
of these women won't even tell you they're married until after the deed is
yeah.
done, which
Yeah.
I'm like, that's lethal.
Yeah. Well, you know, and the thing is too is like people will come up with a lot of rationalizations in order to do that. Whether it's demonizing someone else or demonizing the ex-husband and saying because of him and that he ruined everything and maybe it really wasn't his fault. So these people who are trying to, I guess, live within certain parameters based off how they sell themselves and advertise themselves or cosplay themselves, they have to come up with a really good convincing story to justify why they're over there. You know, and the other thing is too is I think religion, at least a lot of religion, tends to go this route of whatever you happen to do, like you can always be forgiven, and they will accept you back, you know, with open arms. So I think most people kind of have this attitude towards it, like, well, you know, I could come back and all this
Right.
kind of
Just so
thing.
long as I don't die while I do it. Like, if you get caught in your sin, you got a problem. But most people
Yeah,
are like, yeah, I'm gonna bust this one
and
real quick. I'm gonna,
it's always more of a scandal with them too because they're portraying a certain type of lifestyle, I guess, and they're really living something else or hiding it. So it always comes up. It's just like, it's just more of a lifestyle, you know. And again, I think the proof is really in the works, you know. And it's amazing to me that religious people will allegedly bring up their children by these values, but then when it comes time for marriage, arguably the most important thing that a parent should be concerned about for their child, they kind of just throw them out to the wind and say, good luck with the game of romance out here. But, you know, again, it was never like that. They were meticulously working and saving to try to give their children the best shot at the best marriage they can get, because not all marriages are the same. You know, again, marriage is a bargain, and it's a deal making process. And for pretty much all of marriage history, parents were concerned about this deal making process. But nowadays it's not like that. It's more about putting love and your own, I don't want to call it selfish, but your own individualistic desires at the center when it comes to making this deal. And that's just not a good recipe for a long-term deal.
Yeah, you're right about that, man. And then, Andrew Wilson goes with this very, very well-spoken, these opening remarks. Looking forward to hear what Rich has to say to all this.
Yeah, I'll say because, he pointed it out, like, Andrew is like a seasoned debater. You know what I mean? Where Rich said I don't know if he said this was his first debate, or he doesn't really, I've seen him in like panel shows. Okay. Oh, it is his first. Yeah, this is like his first probably real serious debate. So when I'm looking at Rich Cooper, I am trying to keep that in mind. So I guess like I see he's the underdog, but I'm not trying to just let him get crapped on. So I can think maybe he is trying to say something here, and I understand he's not a professional at this, basically. So
yeah, and that's the thing. That's why when people ask me to do debates, I'm like, I'll have a conversation. I'm not debating. We don't, because they're like, well, let's set the ground rules up. We don't need any ground rules. Let's just talk. Don't let them talk too much. Don't let them cut me off too much. Just have a conversation.
Yeah.
And we can look at each other's data. And I have no problem looking at your data. But I don't want to go like this thing, Andrew Wilson. This sounds really good. He's saying all these things. And it's just like, when we gonna get to the back and forth?
Yeah.
All right, so here we go.
Perhaps my opponent and I can agree these are facts, but he still feels the trade-offs aren't worth it, and we can dive into that. But I always view everything as a trade-off. Everything politically is a trade-off. It's always risk versus reward. Somebody's always going to get the shaft. So with that, that's my opening statement. And I would like to dive into these issues when my opponent's ready after his.
All right, Rich, you can have 6 minutes or so. Take as much or as little as you'd like.
Yeah, I won't need it. No, marriage is not worthwhile for a Western man living in the West. Thank you for attending my TED Talk. Let's get started, boys.
Okay. So when you,
and to your point, like, Rich is like, man, I'm not even going to try. I'm not even playing this game, bro. Let's get to the conversation.
Yeah. Well, shout out to him. So here comes the fun part. The part everybody,
Here comes the
gladiatorium or whatever.
Exactly. Get your fingers ready, guys. Get your fingers ready. Here we go.
You say that marriage isn't worth it for men in the West. How are you viewing that? Are you viewing that through risk assessment? You're just doing like a basic risk assessment for men in general?
Yeah, broadly speaking, I would say it's a risk assessment. When you take a look at the landscape, I know that you tend to separate divorce law from good marriage, but the reality of the world is that divorce is a reality for a good chunk of the guys that get married, about half of them. I know you're quoting divorce rates under 50%, but it seems widely accepted that when you blend in second and third marriages, it's well over 50%. But we'll just agree to disagree on that point. But yeah,
well, hang on. Maybe we can get a point of clarification.
Sure, go ahead.
That first marriage is about 41%. Second and third marriages actually get higher. Sometimes with 55 to 60% is cited then.
I got 52% here on my Grok search, but sure, we'll just.
Well, I heard that too. It's like around 40 to 50 for first marriages, and then second and third have a higher rate of divorce. So.
Yeah, because the number is going down. If you go back far enough, you'll see there was like 48, and in some cases it was a little bit over 50. Depending on what state you're looking at, because that number kept fluctuating. But lately it's been around the low 40s, like anywhere between 41, and I think I've seen as high as like 43, 44%. But here's the thing: at the same time, less people are getting married.
Yeah, I can, and they're getting married later, and these kinds of things. And as far as the more recent marriages, I don't know. Maybe it'll look different, or it'll go higher, and in the future it might even go less. So yeah, I hear you on that. There's less people overall getting married, and the people who probably are getting married, something about those demographics might be different.
Right. And so when I talk about it, I'll always say, yeah, the official numbers are, in the 40s now, but we all accept, like Rich Cooper said, man, we widely accept it. 1 in 2 marriages fail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just like you got to. It's a 50-50 shot.
Yeah, and Andrew
You
said at the
know,
beginning that he yields that 40% or 41% a large number. I mean,
yeah.
if you're going to jump out of a plane with the parachute and there's a 41% chance of it not, then, or if you just go in a plane at all and there's a 41% chance it'll make it back to the tarmac, that's probably,
Hey, bro,
unless
if it
you
was a
really got to
41%
get somewhere.
chance,
I mean,
real
choice
talk,
is yours.
41% chance if you get in your car today, you're gonna get into an accident. You might not drive today.
No, yeah, I'll probably just, walk. I'd really have to go somewhere, let me tell you.
Right, you really have to go there. And even if we're not talking about losing your life, it's just, man, I don't want to deal with got to deal with insurance. I got to deal with the stress. I might get hurt a little bit. It's like, it ain't worth it. So yeah, and as a former paratrooper, as a guy who did jump out of airplanes, I mean, I'd take the 41, 50%. I don't care, but they would have to let me pack my own chute. That's the only, I'm like, I got to pack my own chute.
Yeah, I've always liked what James Sexton kind of said about this. This is probably like a year and a half ago. But he would say that marriage is almost kind of like a lottery. Like if it's bad, I can't remember if he used the word lottery, but if it works, then it's amazing. Like the reward, like it's really great, but that only happens for like a very small amount of people. Because even the people who are married, so many of them are in unhappy marriages, which is another thing to acknowledge. But when it goes bad, which is for a lot of people, it's really bad.
Yeah,
So
because when you throw in the unhappy marriage, like, okay, let's give Andrew Wilson 41% divorce rate. Let's give it to him. All right, cool. But when you throw in the unhappy marriages, I mean, you're probably looking at north of 70, 75%.
yeah, that's the other thing too. And so, I think for me, a lot of the discussion comes down to this idea of family creation and reproduction. And, I think at some point or another, everybody, I think, has this thought of wanting to have a family, whether that's for the long term or forever or for at least having some kids or something. I think it's best if the children are brought up in a home where mom and dad are cohabitating and they have some kind of unified family like that. So I can understand why marriage obviously has its positives in that way. But it's like when it goes bad and when it goes south, it affects everybody. Like the ripples of consequences of divorce are so much. It's not just the emotional hurt. It's not even just you paying child support now and alimony. It's also for the kid's future and what they lost out on and they otherwise could have had. Maybe a better start for college, a better start for their lives. It just affects so many people's lives in a negative way.
Yeah, I mean, it just, I'm a single dad, right? I co-parent. Like, when we were talking earlier, I was actually dropping my daughter off and coming back home.
Mm-hmm.
And this really negatively affects children. Even when you have the best co-parenting situation that you can ask for. You got two parents who aren't at each other's throats. Like, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing the best they can for the child. The child is still stuck between two worlds.
Yeah.
And and it becomes like, in kids, my daughter's 17 now, like she's almost a legal adult, and kids know how to manipulate their world. So if something's going on here and she doesn't like it, I'll just go to mom's house and vice
They
versa.
start playing politics. Like there's not a united front between the parents and the children. So they they start to learn on some kind of rudimentary level how to play one parent against each other. And the parents,
They know how to do that.
like a lot of times too, you'll see one parent maybe use the child against the other one, or that's where you get in all this parental alienation kind of stuff. And they're not saying, hey, that's your father, that's your mother, you need to respect them. They might even be encouraging them to not have a good relationship with the other parent, which is a sad part.
Well, it's sad, but you also have learning opportunities. Like, okay, this is a teachable moment. And it's like, okay, the other parent did something wrong, but let me use this as a teachable moment. But you feel, it's like, damn, I'm highlighting a mistake that the other parent made.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be misconstrued. Like, oh, you trying to make me look bad. Now the other parent comes out. Now that at the happy, like situation isn't so happy. Now the other parent is like, oh, you thought that was bad. Where do you see this? So it's just a horrible thing. But you don't want to be under the same roof when you have two grown-ups that don't like each other either.
That's the unhappy marriages too. Yeah, so that's the other side of that too. It's like the parents resent each other. The kids can probably pick up on this, and it's a disaster in so many ways, but
It's a disaster. So we have to figure it out. And I don't believe that the religious thing is the answer. I think it might be the answer for some folks.
in some ways, and not to get conspiratorial, but I think the religious folks love this. Like, I don't think they like, everybody getting divorced, but they really like to say that it's really only this. Like, there's this big problem, and them being able to sell religion as the fix for all of this is like something I think that they like, or that they want it to be a positive thing. Like, well, it's all about the spirituality. If you guys just go to church and you guys just do that, where I'm over here, I'm like, okay, spirituality is important, but there's also this important material economic aspect that goes hand in hand with this. But if the religious people want to kind of barge over and say, no, this is the most important thing, the main thing, and nothing else matters, God will provide, you guys will figure it out.
Yeah, because it's like
there's
God's
more
not the
to
judge
it.
today. Yeah, that's Judge Smith. That's not Judge God up there. That's Judge Smith up there.
Yeah.
So, you got a problem.
Yeah,
possibly.
there was a newspaper I was reading from about like 100 years ago, and they were talking about the issues with marriages, because the love match was becoming popular, and the lady who was writing was saying, it might be a match made in heaven because of the romance, but the couple has to carry out their marriage here on earth, and that's where more pragmatic things need to be considered.
That's fire right there. So the debate is about to get good. I did watch this, but I was doing a lot of stuff. It was on in the background, so I don't remember everything. I do know that we're coming up on in about 10 or 15 minutes. It's gonna get juicy. It's gonna get a little juicy. I think you're gonna really enjoy it. So I guess we get back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally high.
Yeah.
The question becomes, though, why is it that this is always assessed as a monolith? We don't assess anything else like that. Like how I was just speaking about workplace fatalities. You wouldn't tell men not to work with their hands because it's risky, but you might advise men not to get into really high risk fields where working with their hands is going to account for those negative outcomes. How come all is this always grouped as a monolith instead of being grouped into individualistic groups and assessed on high risk, low risk, which is what you would do with basically everything else on planet Earth?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to answer that. Well, when you're talking about marriage, you're not talking about jobs and careers, because jobs and careers vary. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, I did a co-op course for auto mechanics, and I've always been very interested in cars. I'm sure you're aware of that. So it's a hobby of mine. It's more of a pastime. It's enjoyable. And I realized working on cars at the time, because they used a lot of asbestos on the drum brakes, and I was always assigned as the guy that was going to do the repairs on drum brakes for some reason. Shocking, they give the kid, the new guy, that job. I didn't know a whole lot about the toxicity and the damage that you do to your body and your lungs over time, until it hit me like a frying pan to the forehead, and I decided, yeah, I'm not going to do this job. This isn't something I want to make a career out of. Let's find something that's a little safer. So I moved from working with my hands and fixing cars to office work, I guess.
That's a good point.
You don't really have that choice with marriage. It's like, if you live in a way that looks like marriage to the state, regardless of whatever it is you want to call it or how you want to blanket it, the way the government works is they examine your relationship. And even if it wasn't a marriage or even looked like marriage, there's been a number of circumstances and cases, which I'm happy to talk about, where they called it a marriage, even though the two people together did not call it a marriage, and the people around them did not call it a marriage.
Real quick,
kids did not call it a marriage. So
I know Rich
I
Cooper is
that-
from Canada, so I can't remember exactly, but I think common law is a little different up there. It might be more pervasive, so I would need to double check that. But so from his perspective, from Canada, I can definitely see that being the case.
One of his big things is know what the common law, regs are in your state. When he's talking to Americans, he's always saying that, like, hey man, be careful, find out exactly what constitutes common law, because there's going to be a problem. I think he's on that because of where he is in Canada. They do things differently up there. I was talking to some friends of mine. I'm like, man, I ain't trying to live in Canada. I don't even know if I want to go visit now. Like, y'all on some wildness up there, bro.
I visited Canada recently, and I had a good time. Shout out to the Canadian folks. But yeah, I hear you. Those laws are a bit scary.
Yeah, because I was looking at going to Toronto. Like, I want to go to Toronto, but it looked like fun. But I was like, I don't know, man, because who knows what I might get myself into. I still got a little. I'm old, but I still got a little game in me.
Oh, here we go. I have a Shout out to Donald J. DeMarco in my chat. He's from Canada. 2 years common law in Ontario. So it looks like if you're cohabitating for 2 years, if I understood that right, then yeah, that's common law in Ontario. So thank you
I
for that.
wonder what constitutes cohabitation. Is it like 3 days out of 7, 4 days out of 7 for more than 6 months? I wonder. I'm sure they gotta break it all the way down.
Yeah, that I'm not. I've never actually heard about if there's specific days that they would look at it like that. That might be up for the court to decide. But if you guys are both holding out to live at an address and living and receiving mail there, then that's your guys are cohabitating, living in the same domicile.
Yeah, I knew some old school dudes. I want to say maybe this was Ohio, maybe California. I can't remember which state, but somewhere here in the U.S., right? Somewhere in the continental United States. The guy would never spend more than 3 consecutive weeks with her, or let her stay more than 3 consecutive weeks with him.
Oh yeah, in order to mitigate and to get around whatever the specific thing was. That's interesting, man. That'd be some good stuff for people to know at that point, just to not get caught up in that. Whenever I look at it too, I know it's gonna be probably up to the court, but I would be really interested in hearing about that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, we definitely gotta look into that. Let's do a little research, like some unofficial research, just to see what it is. I'll check here in Florida, what it is in California. Because a lot of people will say, "Well, just don't have your mail delivered there." But if you're there,
yeah,
8
because they're
months out
gonna
of
bring you
12,
in. They're gonna ask you pointed questions. She's gonna come in and say, "This was here. This is this. This. Here's my log of all the times." And they're gonna be like, on this day, like they will go through it about where you were. They're gonna ask you pointed questions, and they're gonna try to establish that, in court. And then pretty soon your own testimony is gonna give you up, and all these
gonna
kinds of
give you
things.
up. And
Yeah,
nowadays, it's like, here's my fob. Here's a printout of all the times my fob was opening doors and
yeah,
closing doors, and here's
exactly.
the video footage of me going in by myself, walking in.
Yeah,
So
the good thing about the U.S. is not, most of the states aren't common law marriage like that. I know cohabitation is an important thing, so that can change some things. But, as far as actual like marriage contract goes and a common law marriage, at least there's some mitigation against that.
yeah, shout out to your man though for giving that information. Because man, like I said, I hear crazy stories about Canada.
Heck yeah.
All right, here we go.
Wouldn't that lead to my point though? So
No.
if it's the case that you're not advocating for marriage in low risk groups, that is necessarily going to lead to a larger amount of cohabitation. You're not protected from the state when you cohabitate, and the outcomes are generally worse anyway. But none of this actually answers to the question of, if it's the case that certain groups and certain belief structures and certain ways you live your life lead to a much, much more diminished chance of divorce, then why would you advise people, like, for instance, let me give you the easy example, the Amish. What would your objection be to Amish people getting married? They basically never get divorced.
Yeah, and that
Can you
works out
pause it
well
for a
them
second?
right now.
Sorry, this is my problem. I keep pausing. I know we got to get to the fun stuff, but when it comes to the Amish,
No, that's fine. We good, bro. We good.
in order to look at their divorce rate, I think an important thing would be like, how does their economy work? You know what I mean? When they get married, how are the households set up? How much parental involvement is there in setting up a new household? What is the community involvement there? Are they coming together to help these folks make a new house? Like, what is it really? Because their divorce rate and their way of living might be so different because they're taking a host of pragmatic factors into consideration, and it's not just spiritual beliefs on the face of it or whatever it happens to be. So when it comes to all these very real economic factors and the incentives that are built into their system, like, what does that look like exactly? And I think that drives towards something that's, I don't think they're actually practicing a dowry system, but it could be something that's not unlike that because they're taking in a lot of considerations about how they live, what technology they use, how they make their money, and who owns what and what contributes to the formation of a household.
I mean, think about it. If it were the Amish are probably living as close to the 16th century, 17th century, as anyone in modern times today, with a few exceptions. So back then, if you were a woman and like, you know what, I'm tired of this, and you just want a divorce, you're not just leaving your husband in your house, man. You're leaving the entire community, which means you're out in the wilderness by yourself. Like, you're not gonna survive, literally.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it wasn't these modern industrialized urban megacities that we live in. Class mobility and the economy and jobs, it was very different back then. So people were confronted with that and they had to make appropriate decisions. Otherwise, they were going to be taking a huge step down and it would be very challenging for them.
Very challenging. What are you gonna do? You're gonna leave your Amish village and go over with the Puritans, or go over there with the Pilgrims? I'm
No,
about to go over here with the Pilgrims.
really, what's most likely to happen is you're going to end up being a laborer somewhere, being paid not very much, and living off handouts and charity if you're lucky enough, or if you're, if you're a woman, God forbid you end up in the building behind the tavern that starts with the B, in order to feed yourself.
Exactly.
So it was very different back then.
It was and
And
this is
even
what
now,
the religious guys.
Sorry, go on.
I was like, the religious guys, and the point Andrew was trying to make is like, bro, you're not. It sounds good. It sounds very well thought out,
Hmm.
but it doesn't mesh with what we're doing in 2026. It's just like, bro, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're not really buying it either.
Yeah, just the Amish, aren't they very well known for avoiding technology? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like, well, we have a very different challenges based off the technologies that we have now. I always call technology the X factor.
Definitely the X factor. And I believe, I mean, I don't know if it's true. I've never seen it with my own eyes, but they talk about how the whole community comes together and they build houses for one another. Imagine that you get married.
And
Like,
the
a young
community
man,
comes
young
and
woman.
takes care of the house. Yeah, and then like providing after the household has been established is a very different order from providing the entire household and every single other bill and whatever her whims are, because this is all based off romantic love and she's up here and you're down here and you're serving. You know what I mean? So, and again, just to reiterate, for much of especially monogamous marriage history, the dowry would constitute, you can say like 3 years of the father's salary that he had saved up. Imagine getting 3 years of the bride's father's salary at the time of marriage. So
Wow.
she's coming in with $300,000, like a house around where I'm at's 550. That's going to solve a lot of problems. Then I'll have my savings in the house is pretty much done. Okay, let's pay the bills and provide going forward. Still important stuff, but it's a lot different from you leveraging all of your savings and everything you worked for and then calling it community property. And then, 5 years later, they want to walk away and all of a sudden it's gone and they put not one penny in it.
Yeah, and even in the scenario that you just brought up there, your dad kicks in $300,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You get married, so that, like you said, that's basically half of the startup cost for this relationship.
Yeah.
You leave. You're not taking just old boy's money. You're really taking your dad's money.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's basically what it is. So this provides at least a little bit of incentive. First of all, it's an incentive to attract a higher status male. So you're attaching this to your daughter, and you're saying, "Hey, Mr. High Status Male, I want you to be monogamous to my daughter only. I want all your resources to go into the children she's going to have, and for her." Where otherwise, and this is what we see now, the higher status males are enjoying multiple women. Why? Because they can, and because monogamous marriage doesn't seem like a good deal. Like, you have to wrangle the high status guys into a monogamous position, and that was one way to do it.
Yeah, and even back in the day, I mean, the top tier dude, the high status guys and the top tier dudes always have multiple women. We talk
Yeah.
about like, royalty and all that, anyone with title. And then you had the guys like, Cyrano or,
Yeah, that's true. Like, there were concubines and stuff like that. The difference is the position of wife. Like, a monogamous society class then would be just you only have one wife, and the wife occupies a station, and her children occupy a higher station than a concubine's children, or some child out of wedlock.
Exactly.
Basically, so they have rights to inheritance and stuff. As far as the father,
she has title.
She has title, exactly.
She has the title.
And that's the most important thing is that wife is quite literally a station that's supposed to mean something. And to occupy that station requires a certain amount of bringing something into that. But nowadays it's more about, romance and I guess you can say
Well,
cosplaying.
even back then it was about game, because you still would have that woman with title and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And Casanova, the original Casanova, is still blowing her back out. Like, think about that. That dude was so cold with his game that his name is still synonymous with
Yeah.
being the Giga Chad,
Yeah.
Casanova.
Yeah, that was a big thing too. You know, it's interesting too with the dowry history as romance starts to come on the fray, because you have like the love matches. Uh, for a long time, you know, because most people, even the poor, couldn't do love matches, even as the novels were becoming popular after the printing press. So it was mostly aristocracy and people who can afford romance, basically. And a lot of times, romance happened outside of marriage. But as it started to kind of spread and become more popular, you had guys like that. You'd call them dowry hunters too, where they would try to seduce a woman, and if her family would try to save their honor by then actually marrying them, you know what I mean, together. And it's a fascinating history. But yeah, seduction is a part of the game for sure.
My God, that's crazy, because that would have been so dangerous back then. Because you want to save her honor, which meant
Yeah, you
her
know what that
brother or
means.
cousin. Yeah, it's like, hey man,
Exactly.
you might have to meet pistols at dawn, bro.
Yeah.
It could be that.
Yeah,
So
exactly. I could
that's a
go on about
dangerous
this stuff
thing.
for so long, but yeah, I know we got to get to the.
Yeah, hey, we'll get through what we get through, but one day, man, we're gonna have to pick up this conversation. You have to tell me, like, shoot me some books to read about that, because that's
Yeah,
really fascinating, bro.
I will, man. I will.
All right, here we go. Let's keep going.
But there's a lot of cultural values that support that. There's a lot of environmental factors that support strong unions in a perpetuity with the Amish, right? That doesn't exist in the rest of the world.
It does. It does. The idea in religious marriage, and the reason the divorce rates are so much lower, when you dive into the literature behind this, because it's actually a very studied phenomenon, because of a support
with the
network.
Amish, you're saying?
No. To all of these various religious groups that I cited. This would include Mormons, Catholics, Orthodox, various reasons cited for their divorces and why the divorce rates are so much lower than the national average. And it seems to really come down to this, and this is a concession I can generally get out of the people I debate in your sphere, because I think it's just kind of obvious and true, that if women don't have a reinforcement mechanism for behaviors, then, and this is true of men too.
Ought argument, and that's what you tend to do. You give ought arguments rather than.
No, this is a descriptive is argument. It is the case right now, factually, that these rates of divorce and the highly religious are much, much lower than the national average. So significantly, in fact, that your chances of getting a divorce seem to be mitigated in the acceptable risk factor, at least in comparison to the historic standard. Mm-hmm. That's descriptively true.
So one thing he said there specifically was highly religious. So, I don't know why. I remember this was actually like on a Better Basser video, but I'd have to look at these things again too. But he looked at different religious denominations and stuff like that and saw what their divorce was, and it didn't seem that far from the national average. But Andrew's saying highly religious people is being less than the national average. So I wonder if that word highly religious is doing some heavy lifting right now, is all I'm saying.
It's doing a lot of heavy lifting, man.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of
that's all it takes. It's like they're saying God wills it.
Yeah, I also suspect that he's talking about a support network as far as reinforcing the woman to stay there. I think there might be maybe some other factors at play as far as this support network that could be economic and actually material. I don't know though, but there might be other factors there that are more pragmatic, that aren't just reinforcement of religious belief in terms of like shame or, you're going to be excommunicated or something. But maybe, I don't know. But I just noticed that highly religious people. So maybe there's specific stats he's looking at that delineates between religiosity in terms of like how often are you guys both praying together at night? I don't know. That's what they're always selling though, is
But here's the thing: if you're saying that today's religion, for the hardcore religious people, they're kind of getting down the same way that people got down back when the Bible was written, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not true, because if the Catholics, for example, were really hardcore Catholics like they were back in the 40s, 50s, and then all the way back, to Martin Luther or whatever, with the split.
Mm-hmm.
If the Catholics were hardcore like that, most Americans wouldn't be able to get married. Women aren't pure anymore. Guys aren't beholden to the church like they're supposed to. So you wouldn't even be
A
able to get
lot
a
of people
sanctioned
wouldn't
marriage.
even, yeah, you would have already been kind of crossed out of that pool of people that even qualify for this in some way. And that's where things like, people come in and they get forgiven for everything again, and then they start off the born again, stuff.
The born again, this and that. And which again, I'm not knocking it, man. For whatever it takes for you to get through this life, man, by all means, go ahead and do it. Don't
Mhm.
hurt nobody else. Just go ahead and get down. But I can't buy into this ultra, you know, orthodox religious thing when we both know that's not the case. They're letting any old body come into their church, right? They're letting any old body get married. I can see them say, okay, you sinned, you messed up, you could come back into the church, but we're never going to sanction another marriage. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That kind of thing.
I think that's what it's supposed to be. From what I've heard for Catholics, it's like they can get secularly divorced, but the minute, or at least what now they give out annulments, and they made annulments easier to get, but it used to be like when you get remarried, you're technically living in sin and fornicating as far as their beliefs go. So then, you know, you're not allowed to do that basically. But nowadays, if they give out annulments really easy, then it's kind of like a loophole for all that.
It's a loophole. And my thing is, this is why I
Mm.
can't get behind it. You know, it's like, bro, you made a promise with God and your family, and you just want to break it 2, 3, 4 times, and it's okay.
Yeah, the other thing too, I mean, I look at Christianity a lot because obviously the culture is heavily influenced by that. So I'm very interested in the laws and how we got the laws that we did get. So looking back, you have to look at that also to see maybe what the beliefs and understanding was. But I think it's interesting for Christians because a lot of the belief is that, you're only supposed to get married to one person and one flesh and all that. Um, but other religions, divorce isn't looked at the same way. In Judaism and Islam, divorce is something that can happen, and there's prescriptions for that about how to go about it. So it's more of a pragmatic thing again. It's not so steeped in the spirituality of it that you can't get divorced. And
And
divorce
that's
rates for Middle Eastern countries, they're probably around like 20% or so, especially nowadays, they're more so. But I've read in some historical writings of Europeans looking over at the Middle East, and they would say that their divorce rates were always higher than what you would see in Europe. So it's just interesting. That's just something I notice.
well, back then you needed permission from the Pope, and you had to have a lot of money to bribe the Pope, or you would go
To
to
get the
war.
annulment. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, or you would go to war, like George did. So, I mean, I
And you
think
had to
that,
pay the dowry back too. So
wow,
that would
that's a
be,
big one.
yeah, because so back then when people got married, you know, the property that the wife came in with, it was always her property. The man just had management of it within parameters. So he couldn't go, bet it all
Right.
on the table the next day. But he did have management and the incomes that come from it, especially if it was land and things like that. But in the case of divorce, she would go back with her dowry unless she had committed adultery and there was children of the marriage. Then it would be looked at as differently. So there was just these different incentives that really bonded people and kept them together, and leaving was not something that was easier to do because really it comes down to the laws again. The laws have to reinforce this, to provide incentives. And that's why, in at-fault divorce times, there was less divorce because it was very hard to get a divorce unless there was a proven reason for that.
Exactly. And the church and the community were one. Now there's a huge split. Again, I just
Mm.
can't. I don't buy this notion that because you're deeply religious, you're gonna be okay. I mean, could you imagine if today's modern church for these hardcore religious types were doing scarlet letters? I mean, most of the people in the church will have like a scarlet alphabet on their shirt, bro. It
Yeah,
wouldn't just be 1 or 2 letters.
I think the challenge for them is it's tough to do that because if one decides to do that, then it's more of like a market. They're kind of beholden to the marketplace, and then there's other churches who maybe are more lenient or might not do that. And there is this kind of economic aspect of I don't know if it's called tithes and the
Yeah.
donation plate, so to speak, and all that. So it is a marketplace where they're competing for getting people in there in some ways.
I want to take a moment and I want to show some love to brother Ian, man. 8826, man. Appreciate you with the $20 super sticker, man. Fire. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you, man. This is, Sean, I like to, man, I hope you and I can talk more, brother. Because I really enjoy these conversations. And I want to find some stuff we don't agree on so we can kind of,
Yeah.
like delve into it. And I can learn. I learn so much when I talk to folks with a different opinion than mine.
Yeah, that'd
And,
be helpful
this,
for me too. The more collabs and stuff I do, I know there'll be stronger and stronger pushback. So, we got to get in the gym with each other, basically. It'll be good for both of us.
Absolutely, man. And but yeah, man, like this whole religious thing, and here's the thing, if you are super religious, I'm not trying to pull you away from that. I'm not. I think that's great, especially if that's helping you deal with life. Man, that's stay in the books. I just tell those folks, like, you don't have to be in a church. Jesus never had a church. Remember that. Jesus was walking around and he was hanging out with the pimps and the hoes. He was hanging out there with the murders and the thieves. So get out there. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. But whatever you're doing, that's great. Just understand that religion is not going to stop a man or a woman from going into an American court of law and walking away with half your stuff if they get a chance. That's not going to stop them. Maybe they won't do it. But but if we're talking about mitigating risk, which just seems to be the conversation here, I can't get behind what Andrew Wilson is saying here.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. I mean, I don't want to dissuade anybody from being religious and living that life. I think what's important to me is to understand that there are certain expectations that are placed upon you that aren't necessarily religious. And that's why the history aspect is important to me, because when you see how people negotiated marriage and how the matches were made, none of that stuff was things that were condemned by, the church. I have a newspaper article with the Pope literally handing out dowries and charity to poor women who couldn't get married. So it's like, there are other aspects that are even outside of marriage that influence the way people did marriage. And maybe some of the churches did adopt that to a certain point, but there are, different choices in how you can negotiate a marriage. And if there isn't a marriage on the table that's worth it for you to take, then yeah, none of these marriages are worth it to take. So why would you do that? Then Rich Cooper point would make sense. But if there is an incentive on the table in a marriage and a bargain that makes sense, then yeah, by all means do it.
By all means do it. So let's keep rolling.
Prescription. Like, are we talking about Christianity here?
No, we would talk. Well, no, what we're doing is we're isolating groups. So let's take all of marriage, and then we're going to break it into the categories of the people who are getting married. So so people who are getting married are going to fall under different categorizations. They could be secularists, they could be swingers, they could be polygamists, they could be atheists, they could be devout Catholics, they could be devout Orthodox. The thing is, the reason it's more useful to break it up that way is because then we can peer in and see if each of these groups has the same exact risk as each other group when it comes to marriage, and we find out that's not the case at all. And that these risks are mitigated descriptively right now if you're part of a religious organization that is much more devout. And the more religious you are, seemingly the more happiness you report and the lower your divorce rates become.
But even if that's self-reporting, first of all, and no one's going to say this marriage sucks because it reflects on the church. They don't want the church to look bad.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point about those. Yeah, and I want to be charitable to what he's saying, but I think he mentioned some numbers in the beginning, but I would like to see, not to be that guy who's like, give me a source, but it would be important to look at that stuff, because it's like, yeah, if it's less than the national average, but it's still 25%, you know what I mean? Then it still might
numbers,
not.
I'm not going to tell you, but those numbers are going to come up. They're going to, that's
okay,
gonna happen.
fun.
You're
awesome.
going to get to see it. Let's keep going.
Great.
So your answer is just be more religious.
No, what I'm asking is, what is the thing that's causing that? What is the thing that's causing these groups to have such a more mitigated amount of divorce in comparison to the national average from secularists? What is it?
That it's written to encourage women to leave men and divorce rape them?
Wait, what was that? I'm sorry.
Do you want to start with family law and how it's written to encourage women to divorce rape men?
I'm not disputing that.
Okay. Well, that's a problem.
It just doesn't have any, because you're not contending with my point. What are the things inside of these religious institutions?
Is that still a valid threat?
Yeah, but what are the things inside of these religious institutions that is causing this mitigation where the risk is so much lower than the national average from people who are not inside of these religious institutions? Not asking whether or not people should be more religious.
Mhm.
I'm asking us to make an assessment on what are the factors here that are contributing to them having such a low rate in comparison to the national average. That's the question.
Okay, so what's the difference in rates between Christians and non-Christians?
Depends on the denomination. But I just went through
Average
them
it out.
broadly.
Average it
I
out.
can go through. I mean, I can go through them again if you'd like. Here, I'll pull them back up 1 second.
Yeah. Just average them out.
So when we're going through each denomination, we can start with we'll kind of start with the lowest risk. The lowest risk is going to be the Amish, right? Second's going to be Mennonites. Then you're going to have Mormons and Catholics at almost the same rate. Orthodox at a lesser rate than that, about 12%. And the list from there goes on and on. The more traditional the value set is with what are called Protestant high churches, meaning the more they go to church and things like this, they end up in a risk mitigation that's almost 20% lower than the national average as well. The only Christians who fall into the same average as non-Christians are going to be what are called nominal Christians. So these are people who self-ID as being a Christian or cultural Christianity, but they don't actually involve themselves in the church or in that lifestyle at all. They just call themselves that. That's called nominal Christianity.
Well, I appreciate the lesson there, but you still didn't answer the question. What's the difference in the divorce rates between Christians and non-Christians? Let's just use atheists as an example.
It's as high as 25%, the distinction between that and the national average. The reason
So it's
atheists...
9% versus 25%.
What's that?
So it's 9% versus 25% is what you're saying.
Well, again, it depends on the denomination.
Okay.
The question's lack.
It seems to me
It's kind of nebulous. I'll tell you that. Sorry, DL, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd really have to look at how they're getting those numbers, and I don't want to doubt him, but it's kind of, we're taking his word for it right now. So maybe it is a little bit less, but it's like if most Christians are 25% anyways, that's still pretty high. How long are these marriages that they're looking at? Are they looking at, of the first 10 years of the marriage? Are they looking at longer than that? If you look at most of the pool of people today who would consider themselves religious, how many people are highly religious that go to church that much, that are in the optimal age group for marriage? You know what I mean? How many of them are living that life? If it's only 5% of them and 95% aren't, then it probably doesn't bode well, even in light of these numbers. So you have to look at the pool, and then we have to scrutinize these numbers a little bit more. But either way, there's going to be some risk. The Mennonite and the Amish thing, so, I think that can probably be put aside because their lifestyle, again, is very different in terms of technology and all this kind of stuff. The Orthodox, that could be interesting. There could be something at play there. It could be that they're a relative minority, around others. Maybe people who live in a minority community might tend to do better if they stick together that way. I don't know. But I'd want to look more at those and the durations of the marriages they're looking at and how they're measuring religiosity. Is that 12% only for people who go to church every weekend and do all these things that they're putting on there? Or what is it? So, I don't know. For a debate, if I was in the middle of the debate, I'd have to hear that and maybe voice some of these, but you're not going to see the sources on that. But, to be charitable, yeah, it probably is a little bit less. But still, you're still going into an uneven marriage. There hasn't been any discussion about the economic side of this, which to me is fundamental to the question of, is marriage worth it? So it's still about, well, if we mitigate the risk about her deciding to leave, then you can look at it differently. Where I'm like, well, mitigating the risk just based off religiosity isn't enough. There has to be more of a contribution from her, especially for a monogamous setup.
Yeah, I mean, so watching this and listening, very closely now, because yesterday was just on in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to Andrew Wilson, I think his mission, his mission is like twofold. I think his primary mission is to win, quote unquote, the debate. Like, I think it's his primary mission. By winning the debate, I'm gonna get more people to come over to my platform. And I think the secondary mission is to get more men into church. Like, so we got like these guys, we're probably talking about the bottom 80% guys. We got these guys trying to figure it out. Get these guys to try church, and not just anybody's church. Go down to this hardcore, very, very orthodox kind of thing. I think that's what his mission is. Rich Cooper is simply like, all right, man, let's talk about the real numbers. Let's, tell me how, like the same thing we're saying here. Tell me how being a part of some church, a Mennonite or a hardcore Catholic or whatever, how is that going to stop the state, the government, from garnishing your wages?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it seems like the primary focus is an amount of energy expenditure in order to keep her from leaving. The question is how much of that's practical? How much of that falls in line with cultural values in terms of the freedom, people have to be able to live their lives out here? That's, people go light fireworks on 4th of July for a reason, and it's usually because of freedom and these kinds of things. So it all is about the self-policing and how religious the woman's going to be. The question is how many of those women are really there, and then what's expected of the man to qualify for that, so to speak. I don't know. It's just he's making a big promise. I'll say that.
Yeah, but he's definitely selling a dream. And my thing is, it's like, all right, bro, so we're going to go from a 2 out of 4 chance of divorce to a 1 in 4 chance of divorce. Still not liking it. I'm still not liking it.
Yeah,
bro.
especially if you're bringing in everything to lose. You're still, there's still 25% chance is still a big thing. Like, and I get it. Listen, to give him, be charitable to him. I understand like the family creation and people desiring to have a family and have children and live that kind of life is a big thing. And I think what he's trying to say is don't throw it completely out if you can try to mitigate for it. I'm just not really satisfied with what he's putting in terms of mitigation. There's no talk about the economic part of this. It's like, okay, so you guys, everybody goes to church, then you meet some 28-year-old woman, you're 32, she's been out there, but you guys decided to go in there. And when it comes time for this marriage, well, she's just been out there for 28 years doing whatever she's doing. When it comes time to get married, what does that marriage look like? She has $0 and you got to pay everything, and she's hopefully supposed to stay there, and she's been to church for 4 years. Like, I don't know, but there could be a huge religious revival, and I guess I don't want to say it wouldn't happen. Sorry if I'm rambling.
It could
now.
happen. But here's the thing, like you're hoping she just has $0 coming to the table, because
And not
in that
negative
scenario,
dollars.
more likely, right? More likely she's coming with that student loan debt.
If
Right.
anything,
She's
I
coming
have a
with that.
negative dowry.
Exactly. Sorry, it's my sound effect. If
great.
anything, I have a negative dowry. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, what does the credit report look like? There was
450 credit score. You got $10,000 or more in student loan debt. You probably got another $6,000 of unsecured credit.
Yeah.
You got a car loan, right? And that's the big thing. Like she's bringing, and again, like she goes to the church because that's a great play for her. Then you got this dude who is never been with a woman, who's been involved in church. He's been helping out in the church, vacation Bible school and Jesus camp and all this kind of stuff. He is a good man. And the church is like, well, we got this woman, she's born again. We rebaptized her, and now you need to take her.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
the church isn't going to help you. If the church won't even give you, they're not going to come and build that house.
no. And when you're standing in family law, they're not going to be there either. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they would disagree with me about that. I haven't seen them in there. And then also, they're going to look at you and be like, well, you as a man, you're supposed to be able to spot these red flags. And anything that she does that's untoward or bad, it's you weren't leading correctly. There just needs to be a greater discussion here, I think, about masculinity and the conversation about what marriage is and how people should be looking at it.
Now, and I know it might be some ladies out here watching. Ladies, it could happen to you too. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. It could be, you could be that woman that was in church and, you saved yourself and you're pure and everything. And then some guy comes in, you know what I mean? Like a reformed heathen like me comes in, but he's coming in to do what you were saying, Shaw. He's coming in to get that dowry. Like, he's like, oh, I know she's got,
and that happens too. Yeah, that does happen. I mean, there's a bad boy kind of archetype in a sense, and women will give every single penny they have to that guy. They might even take it from another guy and give it to that guy and lose all of the money. They might get divorced, find that guy, flush all the money down the toilet. That's where the red pill stuff, I think, really shines, because there is this discussion about, a lot of the conversation, especially in the early, is like, well, why is she not attracted to this, which is what they say, versus this guy who doesn't seem to follow any of the stuff that that is normally prescribed by society. This guy doesn't have a good job at all. He doesn't do that, but there are these other things, you know what I mean? So
I have zero problem getting women to go out with me on the first date for coffee or ice cream or a smoothie or a walk by the lake or whatever. No problems whatsoever. But then you watch the videos of these dudes who just can't seem to get on, and like, well, why is that, Saint? I'm like, because them dudes don't have any swag. Them dudes don't have any understanding. They don't have any game. Because you're sitting there bowing down to this woman, bro. You gotta, like you said, I'm not saying be an asshole. I'm not saying be a bad boy, but you need to develop some bad boy traits and wear it like a cloak, just so you can get your foot in the door and then let her get to know you.
This is a tough, like, because I keep thinking about that Sarah Stock thing because it was such a big story. But like when you look at her husband, like they're looking at him and they're probably like, you should have been able to spot the red flags. Matt Walsh as much said it in his reaction. It's like, how could that guy do that? He's got no experience, and it would be very tough for him to do that, and even still, I think the red pill stuff is really good for attracting the woman and all that beginning stuff. But if you're still going to take a bad deal in a marriage and you're relying just on the red pill to keep her there by gaming her, that's still going to be a tough thing to do in some ways.
But here's the thing, you lost the game. If you wind up with a woman who turns out to be not the woman you thought she was because you didn't vet her properly or whatever, or you're using these red pill tactics, but you wound up with the woman, you got gamed. And that's the number one rule. Don't get gamed. So, and you can't get mad at her because, again, never hate the players. You can hate the game, but never.
It's
hate
a cops and robbers thing. It's like an eternal, like everybody keeps. You even see it, like, because you see it on the women's side too. It's like they're looking at what we're doing and they're studying, and then they're coming up with strategies and stuff like that. It's like an eternal. Yeah, but yeah, that's part of the fun stuff.
That's part of it. But like with the red pill guys, it's like that. Going to the gym, getting fit, yes, that's great. You want to do that. Getting money up, yes, you want to do that. No, learn a little pickup and get some confidence and be socially in tune. Yes, you want to do that as well, right? If you tall, that's great. You know what I mean? If you're short, it doesn't really matter, but whatever. Yeah. But here's the thing. Once you get her by doing all these things, you get her into the house, at some point, the real you is going to come out. Dudes,
yes,
they open themselves up too soon. They let their emotions out too soon. And like Rolo says, and I agree with him, men love differently than women. It is an opportunistic love. It's a idealistic love when it comes to men. And a lot of times, if you got the wrong woman, it could be an opportunistic type of love. So and if the guy blows it, I put that out there as a red pill lesson as well. Like, if you blow it, bro, it's your fault. So a lot of these guys are saying, well, I'll just go get me a religious girl. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You still got to vet her.
The tough part about it, and so the way I see it is, the red pill I think is really good for giving advice to help you get to the high value. And I understand, like, yes, you can see that and you can understand the seduction game and all that, and it can go a long way. I think the issue for a lot of red pill guys is they're still in this, I think it's still a hard sell to get them into a monogamous position. And I think they still have an understanding of, well, okay, you're looking at these different factors, but I'm saying, hey, look, when you get into high value status, you want to negotiate that and pull more out of her than just herself. Get her to contribute real material something into that relationship, because that's what high value men of the past always did. I think the scary part with family law is, like, you can get into this high value position. Coach Greg Adams always has this thing that I like. He calls it a high value target. But basically, if you still have that and your idea of masculinity is still, well, okay, I'm going to be the 100% provider and she's not going to bring nothing, and I'm going to get married to her and do that. Even with all the red pill knowledge, you're still in this uneven position, is what I'm saying, in terms of the traditional contributions to a marriage. And I mean traditional past 1950s and way past times. So then there's a huge incentive. They always used to say married red pill was the hardest and the most challenging. I don't know if you remember that from the early days. I used to follow the subreddits, and they had their own subreddit for married guys, and they were like, this is the hardest one because it's tough to be abundant and employ all those things, you know, but that's the fun stuff in the red pill.
I mean, and I hear what you're saying. Like guys have to do all this work. They get there, they get a woman, and then you're still looking at the fact that, wow, she really doesn't bring a lot.
Yeah, and that's why a
Right.
lot of guys just end up with the multiple woman situation. But, you know, and you see a lot, I guess if you think about people in the space, a lot of the guys that get there, you don't see them get married. There are some people who are married or have been for a long time, but most of the guys that seem like when they get there, they say no to monogamy at that point because they scraped it from out of the dirt and they got up there, and then they're just like, why would I sign the contract with them?
But you know what the secret,
Yeah.
a dirty little secret to that is? A lot of these guys, you know, of all the players and you know, the high value men and the top tier guys, because I draw a distinction. The high value men are the guys those tenants that Kevin Samuels put out there, right? You know, got to make so much money.
Yeah.
You know, you just all that.
They're
That's
actually
high value.
producing. Yeah.
Right. The top tier guys are the dudes that might have 3 out of the 6, or maybe 4 out of the 6, or they never have them all at the same time. They got, you know, this and that. But those guys still pull in a lot of women. So it's like you got the high value guys and the top tier guys. Those guys, they get tired at some point. The vast majority of them get tired of running through all these different chicks. They get tired of running rotations. You get tired of it. And they'll, you know what I mean? And they'll want that number one girl. Some might do 1 or 2, but most of them want that one girl.
Yeah.
So the value add has to be there.
Yeah, and you know, Paul Elam, I had some discussions with him, and he calls it the hedonism wall. And I think it makes sense, you know, like especially the red pill journey, at least for a lot of guys, is they had trouble getting, you know, girlfriends and relations with women. Some you might have had 1 or 2 before. And then you get to this point where you're like, hey, this red pill stuff actually works, and I'm getting laid, and I have a lot more control over that. There is, I think, something on the other side of that when finally, you know, one night you're driving home again, and you're just like, you know what? You get tired of it, just like you said. I 100% agree with that. I think that's a great observation.
Bro, I'm just telling you, I lived the life. Not to, you know, I'm not sitting here trying to like pop my own collar or something like that, but I was a dude. There's a couple things I realized right away when I was younger. Like people talk about money. Money's great. Like all those other things, money can help. But money is not the end all to be all. When I was at my peak and I was running, you know, my rotations and doing my thing, I was broke, bro. I was broke. But I'm running like dimes. And as I began to get into my career, I became an air traffic controller, started making money, you know, broke the 6-figure barrier and all that. I'm living in LA. Yeah, I was still running a little bit of a rotation, but that whole time I'm thinking to myself, I need to find a woman that's gonna be there. I need to go ahead and make my Voltron, so to speak. And that's where I got in trouble because I began to make bad decisions. I began to completely overlook red flags, which is what the trad-cons do. I began to ignore the warning signals.
You wanted something different. Yeah, you know what's interesting? It's like I think there needs to be a delineation between high SMV, but when you look at like the high value man you're describing that has these other qualities, that is a high, what I would call a marriage market value. So it's like you're looking for 2 different kinds of deals. There's this sort of short-term, low leverage situation. Then there is this longer-term, high leveraged one. And I think there is a little bit, even though they kind of have some relations to each other, but I think the marriage market value and the way guys go about that is something that we should look at specifically for how to negotiate that deal.
No, absolutely. But like we were saying, and we'll get back to the video here in a second, but when the guys figure it out, like you said, they start doing this stuff, the pickup stuff works, the red pill stuff is working, they're getting their money together, they got their fitness on point, they're getting their social skills right, they're driving the right car, they're living in the right place. And then they realize, wow, it is easy. When you realize how wild some of these women are, it is easy to smack. If your mission is just to have sex, bro, man, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Especially today. Especially today.
You know, one thing I'm curious, sorry, I know we got to get back to this.
No, we're good.
I tend to, I have this kind of matador analogy that I like to throw around on my stream. And a lot of this comes from me working at child support. And yeah, I know every guy that walked in there wasn't, you know, like a red pill guy, but I just have this like thing where I always think that the longer you're out there playing the field, I kind of relate that more to, you know, being in the fast lane in a motorcycle versus being in an SUV in one of the slower lanes. It's like, you can get all these chicks, but it's like you're hiring your risk of stepping into a big pile of poo, whether it's a, you know, child unwanted pregnancy, or God forbid a false accusation, or just certain things like that. You know, and when I say matador analogy, it's like I imagine a guy with the red cape, and you know, you can play these bulls, and then you have more than one, you know, bulls in the ring, and you're doing it, and the best guys can do this, but it's like one day you're gonna slip a little bit, and bam, you know, it just seems to happen to so many guys. And when I think about Andrew Wilson trying to fight for marriage, to be most charitable, it's like, okay, you want to get married to someone, you two are supposed to protect each other from this high risk lifestyle. The sad part is like the state has come in and technology has changed so much to where it's like marriage itself, which is supposed to be the safe option, has become so dangerous and high risk itself.
You're right, man.
So
And
both
with
of
your
these things
matador,
have a kind of risk. Sorry, please go ahead.
no, but your matador analogy, man. You could be the best matador in the world in history, but guess what? Even that guy's been gored at least
Yes,
once.
on a long enough timeline.
Right?
You gotta know when to take the off ramp, and that's where I think that the guys becoming tired starts to come in, and they're just like, how long am I gonna do this for? You know?
Well, that's when you get hurt, looking for that
Yeah.
off ramp. And again, it's like now you get into that mindset where I got to make it work, and you're so used to winning. It's like, well, okay, I see that red flag, but you know what? I can fix that. I don't have to worry about
That's a
that.
great point. I like that. You're so used to winning that you get like comfortable with that. That's very
You
very
get comfortable
astute.
with it. This is what happens to you. And I tell these guys, like, you know, a lot of young guys in the red pill, you know, they talk about it. I'm like, you ain't never lived it, bro. You know, it is a battlefield. I refer
Mhm.
to it as the trenches. I've been in these trenches a long time. I am the old soldier. And I'm here
Yeah.
to tell you, man, I've been through those minefields, and yeah, I got blown up. I don't, you know, man, I lost a couple toes. I didn't caught shrapnel. You know
That's
what I
the
mean? I've
thing.
been
Like
handed.
when I hear guys say like, especially something crazy, like I've slept with 300 women, I'm just like, okay, I know there's skeletons in that. Something happened, especially like early on with those first. It's
A
just,
lot happened, bro.
yeah.
And it's,
And if it didn't happen, then I highly question the validity or the veracity of that body count statement.
and here's the thing too, and I tell these guys too, like, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. Man, I got some great stories. I got some amazing stories. And I don't want to trade those stories for nothing. I mean, I needed to go through that. But for every amazing story, I got 10 nightmares, bro.
Yeah, I just say it as at the child support office because you can see like, you know, that guy, and then he steps in just a big pile of poo because he thought it was another easy win or whatever, and then suddenly he's talking across from me. So I just always had me in the back of my mind was always these experiences. So I'm like, I just know, you know, and then my own out there, it's like it is, you got to be very sharp, and even if you're
gotta
that
be on,
sharp still, you know. So
because you're still a matador. Like that's a great analogy, by the way.
thank
Like
you.
you're still in that ring with that bull. Like it's
Yes,
you and your cape
exactly.
and them swords. You're still in that. And every time you stick that bull, he gets a little more pissed. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
And then you got
And
more than one. You got 3 or 4 in there at once.
exactly, like, bro, it's just a matter of time you're gonna get gored.
Yeah.
And you know, and that is so true.
That's
So
the red.
even as a guy, even someone like me, like I could go back into the church. I purposely stay away from it. Like I won't go into the church structure. I you know, I could be spiritual and I'll go out and talk about, you know, the things that, you know, you would, the spirituality of it, but I won't go into the church because I know the type of women that can be in there.
Mhm.
Are there some good women in there? There's some amazing women in there. But I look at church like a hospital, man. You can't go into a hospital and be mad that there's sick people, right? That's how I
Yeah.
look at church. I can't go in church and be mad that there's some 304s in here, or some, you know me, ex-drug addicts in here. There's some criminals in here. I can't get mad at that. So I back away from it, because when I walk into a situation like that, it's like all of those, it's like walking into combat. Like, oh, we're instantly at the front.
Yeah.
You see it. Like, and then the guys who have no experience, it's like, bro, it is, you know, it's kind of like Stalingrad, man. It's like you get the gun, you get the bullets. Like you just sending these guys out here to get mauled by these women, right? Myron Gaines, say what you want about Myron Gaines, but he's absolutely right when he says these guys are going in here doing battle with, you know, with these women, and they're going in there with a toothbrush, and she's in there with a machine gun.
That was the
And
Sarah Stock. I'm sorry to keep bringing that up, but that
yeah,
guy looked like that was probably his first girlfriend. And, you know, we don't even know. The story's not over. He might just take her back and be like, well, we don't even know, you know, or maybe he'll leave her, maybe he won't. But if that was his first woman, like, Yeah, he went in there with the toothbrush and he just didn't spot all these things. And this was happening up to the day of their engagement and all these kinds of things. So it's like
A
he
lot of
didn't
times
spot
that,
anything, you know?
bro, I've seen stories. Well, I've heard stories and I've seen situations in real life where on the wedding night, she'll slide away.
Oh no.
On the wedding night.
Oh no, I couldn't.
Bro.
That would be horrible.
The game is cold, man. And I bring, you know, my experience comes like deep in the trenches, coming from the streets. It's like a different world. And when I try to explain this to these guys, like, man, y'all don't know what y'all dealing with. Some of you do. Like, you need to understand this stuff. You need to learn this stuff so you know what to avoid. But these guys are like, no, I want to deal with that. I'm like, all right, bro, you're going to get mauled. Like you said, all right. Go ahead, Matador. Here, take your cake.
Exactly.
Go on out
You're
there.
the guy. We're all watching, man.
We're all watching. So let's get back to the video. But I really like that Matador analogy, bro. I might have to borrow that one.
Thank you.
Specificity.
Okay, but using the Christians versus the atheists, you're saying it's 9% versus 25%.
No. Atheists are about 11%, roughly, depending on which source you're looking at. But but the reason why atheists have a lower than the national average is because they get married much older usually, or they just don't participate at all. But those are also self-ID'd atheists. When you're talking about secularists themselves, there's many, many more of them than there are atheists, and those seem to account for the overwhelming majority of what constitutes the national average for these things. So I'm looking for what are the things which is causing such a mitigation between the 40%, which is the national average, and the individualistic groups, which have much lower averages, as low as 17, 18%. There's obviously something going on in these religious groups
17,
that's causing them to divorce
18%.
much less than non-religious groups.
Well, in most religions, it tends to enforce the marriage and the consistency of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the idea is
So it would
that,
seem that it's a little bit more successful. Yeah. But
Yeah.
that still doesn't remove the risk factors, and it doesn't also
I was gonna
address
say it
the issues
mitigates
of
risk.
modern women not being marriageable material.
well, hang on. Those are two different arguments. Whether or not you think that modern women are marriageable, we're talking right now just about the risk of divorce. What do you consider to be an acceptable divorce rate?
Well, given family law, 0 would be acceptable.
So zero. Well, if that's the case, then there could never be an institution of marriage because there's always going to have to be at least some divorce, right? Based on some circumstance. That's reason.
Shaw, isn't Andrew kind of coming with the straw man at this point?
Yeah, well, at this point, I just feel like there's other parts of the conversation that can be discussed, right? Because the whole front end of this marriage seems, I guess what I'm saying is like, I don't know how Rich is supposed to answer of what an acceptable divorce rate is supposed to be for a fundamentally uneven marriage to begin with, which is my opinion.
That's why Rich said when it comes to divorce court, it should be 0. Like the risk should be 0.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if I was going to try to answer Andrew's question, like, I don't know, 5%, because, that's what it was a long, time ago or whatever, like maybe 5% is acceptable, but then, you have to get into the reasons for divorce that could exist. You know what I mean? Like, so in a no-fault system where even if you can make it 5% in a no-fault system, I don't know, but it's the risk is still there in the sense of they still have the ability to go no-fault divorce you and take all these things. The deal itself still isn't sound. But I don't know, maybe I'm not doing justice to what Andrew's trying to say here.
Now, I hear you, and I agree with you, man. I think you're right, bro. What they really didn't get into was the legalities of the whole thing and how unfair it is, for somebody. It mostly men, but now women are getting like, Kelly Clarkson. She's mad. Halle Berry.
Yeah,
some of
they
these
have to pay.
They got to pay. So it is unfair to the person who has. And that was a bad contract. But let's continue.
Mm-hmm.
Reasonable within reason.
Yeah, sure. But given family law and how hostile it is to our fathers and the likely outcomes that exist with them, would you like me to go over the outcomes?
They can be real bad.
Yeah, they suck.
Yeah, but that's not what's in dispute here.
Okay, well, what are we in dispute of right now?
Yeah.
Well, what we're in dispute of is that how many of these men who are in these particular groups are ever going to have to deal with those outcomes if their divorce rates are really low because they're in those groups? It could be the
It's
case that the
only
outcomes are
lower.
bad,
It's not really low. It still exists.
but that's
I can
really
give you lots
low.
of examples
Well,
of guys that. Sorry,
well,
go
you,
ahead.
you just try to get it to 0%, just like there's no divorce. That's not utopian. It sounds very utopian to me.
What's wrong with that?
It's impossible,
It's
like pragmatically impossible, that you're going to completely eliminate divorce for any number of different reasons. One could just be easy, like somebody is diddling kids in the marriage. You're going to, they
Okay,
want a
but
divorce. That seems
why
rational to
would
me.
why would anybody invite the government into their life to make decisions about their wealth, their access to their children, how the knot is untied, the power shift that goes from him to her during the untithing of the knot? Why would anybody want to take on that risk given the outcomes and how bad they are?
Because the outcomes are only bad if you get divorced. They're not bad if you
Right.
don't get divorced. And so
Okay.
if your chance of mitigating the divorce is really high and your chances of not being divorced are over 80%, if you're part of one of these groups, then that seems like an acceptable risk mitigation, right?
Well, it's only marginally lower.
No, it's not marginally lower. It's much higher. I mean, much, much lower, significantly lower.
Well, you're giving me
11%
numbers
compared to
around
the
11%
40%
for
national
atheists.
average is what? Go ahead. Sorry.
You're giving me numbers for 11% for atheists, yeah?
Well, no, also Orthodox. Orthodox is very low too.
hey DL, can I
Okay,
ask you something?
it's marginally different, but
If there was an 18% chance that if you got into a plane, it wouldn't land on the tarmac, would you take that chance?
Bro, like how bad do I got to get there? I mean, that's something that's like, it's an 18% chance this thing might, you're asking the guy who, I mean, I'm a former paratrooper, man. I'm used to taking risks.
You jump out of
I'm from
planes.
the hood. But go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think Rich Cooper, like the family law is one thing, but I think deep down, like, and maybe I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't know what he's feeling, but it's like, I think there's this other aspect there of why, when I have all this, am I tying myself to someone who doesn't have anything or anything close to that? The family law is one thing that may happen, but you're still, why am I limiting it to this one person? Basically, why am I tying myself to this? Why am I taking a fundamentally imbalanced deal here? And the reason I'm so focused on that is because, obviously when the divorce happens, they're going to look at who makes what. But historically, when matches were made, it was very different. And it was all about what is each person bringing in a very material way. So you're still gambling it. You're still leveraging yourself a lot more than the other person is what I'm trying to say, even if the divorce rate goes from 41% to 17, 18%, like you mentioned. So there's still something in you that is still going to feel like something is wrong with this. Something about this doesn't make sense.
I mean, bro, again, you can take it all the way down to 5%. If I'm like, yo, Shaw, it's a 5% chance when you go outside tomorrow, somebody's going to bust you in the face with a 50 cal. Bro, are you going outside tomorrow? I'd have to really go outside for some groceries and go out with a shield or something. And here's the thing too. It's like, okay, this doesn't solve the problem in a vertical intergenerational sort of way. So it's like, okay, we mitigate divorce from 41% to 18, 20%. Your marriage lasts and you do everything right and you pass on your wealth to your children and they're facing this same risk of divorce of 18%. When it finally goes belly up for some of them or one of them or whoever, then the whole intergenerational project can die with that. You know what I mean? And that's the problem. Point. No, that's a great point. So you're saying, okay, your marriage worked fine.
Mm-hmm.
You managed to get, you didn't fall into that 18%. Your son's marriage went great. Same thing. Your daughter's marriage went great. And all that wealth has been going down. Now her son falls into the 18%.
Or now you got 3 marriages that just go bust now, finally, because we're just still going on this 18%. There still needs to be things that change or make it work, or at least make it more fair for both parties in there.
Yeah, because the family, like you said, the family fortune gets jacked.
Yeah, that's the thing I've always been thinking about too, working at child support, because my whole job, and especially reading all these divorce judgments, was watching the family nest egg get juiced. And that always bothered me, because it's like, how do these people create intergenerational wealth? It's like, that's what the family project is supposed to be trying to do, is accumulating property, passing it down, going higher up in the ladder based off of good deal making and good bargaining, so yeah. I think a lot of it goes back to bargaining.
And I tell dudes, like young guys, like especially if you have something, like I tell dudes this, like if you're a brokey, you're living in mom's basement, you don't really plan on doing nothing with your life, man. Go ahead and get married as many times as you want, bro. It's fine. You ain't got nothing to
They
worry
will
about.
probably
You're
come
gonna be
out.
great.
That would be a positive thing if they can pull that off. They'll probably come out with more
Right.
money.
You are winning, son. Do that. But if you've done the work, you have the money. Just keep this in mind, guys. If you're making about, and you correct me if I'm wrong, brother. I'm not going to be 100%, but I'm going to be, I think, ballpark. If you choose the wrong woman, you get married. No, you choose the wrong woman, you don't even get married. We ain't gonna talk about alimony. Y'all have a baby. You're planning to build a life with this woman. She walks away. You're making about $150,000 a year, and you might be looking at what, maybe close to $2,000 a month in child support, depending
It'd
on where
probably be
you
a
are.
little bit more than that.
Stuff.
It's going to be about 25% of your net, assuming zero custody. So say she has the vast majority of custody. Maybe you get a weekend here or there. And let's not even figure in custody fees.
Right.
But if it's just child support in California, you can assume about 25% of the net. So if he's making 150, gosh, I'm trying to think what he'd get after taxes, and then divide that and then take 25% of that for one child. If it's two children, it's going to be 40%. They can go up to 55% for 3 kids. So
fellas, y'all hear this, right? So you're looking at, let's say you're paying $2,000. Let's say you got off easy somehow. You're paying $2,000 a month in
that would be
support.
that would be like, yeah, fine. That's not too bad if I'm making 150. Then so be it.
But over 18 years, right? You're like $500,000 almost.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. I will say California does have a gold diggers clause for child support, where if you're making a lot of money, it finally taps out. The calculator finally runs out at 12%. That doesn't mean it's always going to be 12% because the judges do have the power to deviate. They just have to write why they're deviating. So if you're making that kind of money, they're probably going to go hard at you, to try to get more.
Even at 150, I would see like maybe starting at 300,000-400,000, they might want to do that. That's so crazy. The way that they do these calculations, man, because you're looking at, what, if you're at like $2,200 a month, or you're 20, like almost $26,000 a year for 18 years.
Yes, yeah, I know, and they'll be recalculating that as the years go by too. And that's just child support. Now, if you had alimony with that, God forbid, like I used to see cases like that. I saw a case with, there was about $3,000 a month child support, and then with another $8,000 a month, $8,500 a month in alimony. So it's like you're paying $11,500, I think, altogether.
11.5, and that's what the conversation should be, to be honest with you. It's not about being religious or being red pilled or being unplugged. It's about, why are we paying so much money for children when we know how much it costs to raise a child from 0 to 18?
Yeah, about $250,000.
Right. There's nowhere in America where you're going to be spending $500,000 over 18 years to raise a child. It doesn't exist. So the cap should be in there somewhere, regardless of how much money you make. So I think that's what the conversation should be, and I don't think they ever got there.
The problem is, is they write it in the law where it's based off of lifestyle. So it's like when it comes to alimony, they're gonna say that the supported party, has basically they're gonna consider it for the lifestyle you were providing that person. And
that's such bullshit for people who've never been married. Like, what lifestyle?
Well, yeah. Well, for child support, it's also in there too, because they're going to say, well, the child has the right to basically be availed of the lifestyle of both parents. And this is literally how it was explained to me by the attorneys at the agency. Is
because you were asking questions like, this doesn't make sense.
Well,
to me.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's in the family law codes. It's basically there, but that's what the calculator's taken into account, and that's why the income differences matter. And the attorney literally drew a picture of 2 houses, and they said as the kid goes back and forth, we're trying to make the differences between the household less. So as the child goes back and forth, it's a similar lifestyle for the child. And I was sitting there at 26, like, I don't know about that. You know what I mean?
Right. It seems to be the other way around.
Yeah. So yeah.
But to me, that's the conversation. I tell folks, and like, I'm not, anyone who follows me knows that I'm not a Trumper. I've not a fan. But if I had $5 million, I would be able to go to Donald Trump and we could do away with, Title 4D. And I think that would change the game
Yeah,
tremendously.
it certainly would change incentives. Here's the thing I think a lot of people would be afraid of, because Title 4D is essentially a recoupment arm for Title 4A, basically welfare, and welfare dollars go out and they use Title 4D to recoup the monies from parents who, aren't in the household. And goes.
Hold on 1 second, but let's start that over. I want to
Mm.
I want to get us on a 2-shot on this. Let me take the chat down so they can see your face there. This is real important because I want to clip this one. So I said to you, we should do away with Title 4D, and now you're explaining to me what that really is.
Yeah, Title 4D is the enforcement arm for our welfare system. So, we had welfare, and so many kids were being born out of wedlock, and so the welfare rolls were going up really high. So they created a public child support system, Title 4D in 75, in order to recoup welfare tax dollars that were going out, basically. But what I was basically saying is that if you got rid of this system, they would lose a lot of money in how they continue to finance the welfare system and all of that. And the real problem too is, and you got to think about all the money that goes out for welfare, and childcare is a big part of that. That's why this Minnesota story, the quality, the Leering Center and all that stuff, that's all subsidized money. That's welfare money. That's for parents, and by parents, what they mean is mothers who can't, aren't married or got divorced or whatever and can't afford childcare because they're trying to put them back to work. And millions of dollars goes out for that. But if you removed all these programs, basically what you're going to be confronted with, DL, is it's going to be like walking in a third world country. You're going to see all the poor people out, and you're going to see all these homeless people out in front of your face. So it's like, if they do that suddenly, they will be confronted with this problem, at least in the short term. It could be better. I think it would be better in the long term, because then people would start making different decisions about marriage if there was not any of these safety nets, or there wasn't a government-sanctioned wealth transference arm in the form of child support and family law, especially, as far as that goes. Then people would think twice about leaving, But right now, since there's just so much just extra on it, if you just took it out, it would be like walking in a third world country where the sidewalks would be lined with just people that.
So you're saying it would be like walking down Hollywood Boulevard?
Yeah, but but it's pretty bad now. I get it.
Exactly. But you see where when I discovered the rebate, that 66% goes, and it just blew my mind. So I'm like, well, right there is the incentive to go in and order as much child support as humanly possible.
Well, yeah, because the states basically, so the states are incentivized to basically transform their family law codes to be in line with what the federal government expects. Because in order to get funding from the federal government, they have to meet certain qualifications, and they have to meet up to certain standards for their family law system. So it's like, you can't get welfare dollars unless you have a child support program in your state, basically. If you don't have that, then you can't have welfare federal monies coming to you. Then there's performance measures, basically, about how much child support you collect. And based off those monies, you get certain incentive payments. The state gets incentive payments from the federal government for certain things. Like, it used to be, so when the 75 child support program first came out, it was just for recouping the welfare funds. Then later on, they changed it and they said, hey, why don't you guys start advertising your services to families who aren't on welfare? And the more that you do, we'll give you incentive payments for this and all these kinds of things. So what happened is what was really a welfare program came out and barged into America's middle class. And then when people realized, hey, we can avail ourselves of this system and just walk in, I don't even need an attorney, and I can get the wealth transference mechanism going. It just changed. It really just added a lot more fuel to the fire.
Damn. So I am right in my thought process is like, that is where the money is. That is the catalyst for every judge in America to order as much. Because I had a friend of mine who went in with his his then wife, but they were going through a divorce. They had, children involved. There was a child involved.
Mhm.
They worked everything out in mediation. Like, this is what we're gonna do. This is how the money is gonna get moved.
They did it in private family law.
Yeah. Well, you know
Mhm.
how you have to go before you see the judge. You have to
Mhm.
they have you go talk to the
Yep.
mediators or whatever. So they did all that. They got before the judge, and the judge says, "Okay, ma'am, would you like me to order child support?" And she says, "No, Your Honor,
We agreed not
did
to."
that right there." And the judge must have spent 4 or 5 minutes trying to convince her to say, "I want child support." And I never understood that until I found
I
out about that kickback.
I'll tell you why. Because, so, all of these states have what's called the guideline calculator. So that's the calculator you punch it into. That's part of, in order to have a welfare program, you have to have in your family law code. It's got to be up to this certain standard for a child support program. So in order for her to refuse child support, basically the judge has to say, this is what you're entitled to from guideline, basically, and she has to refuse it. But what you're talking about is an incentive, because if they give her child support, and what they'll say is you can just take it to the agency and they will actually they will enforce it for you. So they'll load up the order and they'll get the money from dad and give it to you. When they do that, the amount of money they get from dad gets logged in with the state system. Then when they go back at the end of the fiscal year and report these numbers to the federal government, it looks like they did collect more child support, because it's like, look, we got dad's $2,500 payment here. Look at all this child support we collected. We want a bigger budget next year. And some of that money, also goes into the state's general fund. So the state's general fund, they can then use it for other things that aren't child support related. So it's interesting how that works.
All that needs to change, in my opinion, bro. All of that needs to change, because now we see the play. And that, that's the old adage, man, follow the money.
Mhm.
So it's not about what's in the child's best interest after all. It's really about how much money we can get from the taxpayers via the government. That's
Mhm.
what it sounds like to me. Am I wrong?
They're
in thinking that?
definitely incentivized to perform in terms of child support collected, orders established, all these kinds of things. Paternity. That's why it's like we need some guy's name on the books for the dad. That doesn't necessarily mean we're interested so much in who the biological father is, but we're interested in making sure kids that were born out of wedlock have a dad on the books. And if a kid was born in the wedlock, well, we don't want to disturb that, because we don't want to now have a fatherless kid out here that we got to figure out who the dad is to be able to charge child support. So, yeah.
I can't wait for you to write your book, bro. I'm gonna be in line to get that book. I can't wait. You know what I'm saying, bro? Because that's the real game right there. And
It is, yeah.
damn, I mean, I'm just sitting here letting that process. It's 100% a play. And so, what would happen if all of the states did what Florida did and just went to a default 50-50?
So I think what they have is
that affects
the Kentucky, I think Florida might be doing it, but I heard it with Kentucky, the rebuttable. So they have a default 50-50, but it's a rebuttable presumption of 50-50 custody. So that would in some regards lower like, here's what they do with child support. Child support and custody are completely separate, and it's like they do that on purpose. Child support's all taxpayer funded. The dad's going to go in and be like, hey, she's not letting me see my kid. The child support agency is not going to help you out with that. They're going to say, go across the street and file for a custody case. So what they're saying is leave our public taxpayer funded office and go into the private pay family law courts that you have to pay out of your own pocket for, and is not taxpayer funded, and fight for custody. If custody is lower for the dad, that results in a higher guideline amount of child support. So again, there's an incentive there to not care about custody, because that leads to a higher child support order. And if you can get that paid, then you've collected more child support at the end of the fiscal year. If it's 50-50 and your dad's still making more money, he's still going to pay some child support. But if it's zero, it's going to be higher. Though 50-50, you still got to pay an annoying amount,
Yeah, I mean, like in my situation, even if I got 50-50 custody, which I was unable to get, and we're talking 6 years in court, all that money, like it ruined me. I'm not gonna lie to you. Even if I had 50-50 custody, I still would have been paying $1,000 a month.
Yeah, and that's because of the difference of the the income earning between, mom and dad, basically. Yeah. So even with 50-50, I mean, a lot of people will fight for that because obviously they want to see their kids, but you still have to pay something. That was another odd thing too, because a lot of people, when they come in the agency and they'd say, I don't understand, we have 50-50 custody. Like, why do I have to pay? And then I'd have to explain this whole 2 houses and the kid going between them thing again.
I mean, it's like this the game, bro, and you caught up. And that's the bottom line. Is like, this is how they making their money, man. And you gotta pay. That's the way it is. I get the 2 houses thing, but that's all BS in my opinion. In my opinion, it should be 50-50 custody. Mom takes care of the child when she has them. Dad takes care of the child when they have them. And if there's some sort of shortfall, that's when you go to court and you have to prove to the court that, I need $1,200 so little Bobby or little Jill can go play softball or ballet.
Yeah.
And then,
well, I would say, at the very least, I think the public system for child support should only concern welfare cases and recouping welfare money.
How would that
max.
change the broader picture? If that were the case?
Because private families who aren't on welfare couldn't have, unless they went on welfare, then they can go in there and they can only collect for the periods that were owed under welfare. Because when a child's on welfare, the child support rights go to the state away from the mom. So the mom agrees to get welfare and assigns the child support rights to the county, basically.
So okay, let's paint a picture here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's 50-50 custody. Let's say mom is making $200,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Dad is making $35,000 a year. 50-50 custody. Dad is on welfare. He's getting assistance for food and whatnot.
With the child?
And he has child 50%. Let's
okay.
Say I guess
if you're 50-50, you can apply for welfare if you have 50% custody. So they will give you the welfare if it's 50-50.
So what would mom have to pay because dad is getting welfare?
So I couldn't tell you exactly. Like, I could pull up the calculator and punch that in right now.
We're just playing with numbers. Like just
Yeah, no worries.
Ballpark.
Let me do that right now. It probably would be around what the $100,000 guy was paying, but I just want to see because.
Wow. Now you're curious.
Yeah. The thing is the 50-50 custody and he's making $35,200. So there's a split there. But I just have to look at it because now it's going to bother me. Oh gosh. Guideline calculator, agree and proceed. 1 child. And so mom's going to be parent 1 because this is genderless. And we're going to do this by annual salary. And you said mom's making 200 or 250K?
Yeah, you pick one. Let's say 250. Let's make it big. Yeah,
okay, 250. Dad is making 35. And if for the purpose of the example, if he's making 35K, I think that's above the welfare limit. Let's just say he's making 0.
In California, I think in California he would qualify. I think it's up to 50.
Maybe. I mean, it's probably higher now. So let's just do fine 35. They're gonna run you through the calculator, and then it's 50-50. And this is a very simple. Oh,
yeah, real bait. No extra details. Just
Exactly. Sorry. Okay. So just in 50-50 split custody.
Yep.
Okay, let's do that.
And if you have to, make him custodial parent, if you have to.
Okay, so
I don't know if they'll ask for that.
Looking at that, so with 50-50 custody, that's $1,518 a month, which isn't.
She would have to pay.
She would have to pay that, which isn't as bad as the 200,000 guy. I think the gold digger clause goes in there a little bit, but it's also because he's making 35, and the big thing is the 50-50 custody.
You said 1,518, 1,500.
Yeah, 1,518 a month.
18, and the state gets that money.
No. So what would happen is the amount that was expended in welfare would get paid first, and then the leftover amount would go to dad. But the state gets to say that it collected $1,518, and that looks good on the performance measures, which then get used for the next year's budget and fiscal year, basically how much they get from the federal government.
So
yeah, and if it was
your knowledge of how the system works, let me ask you this: with your knowledge of how the system works, how should the system work to benefit families not on welfare? Is that even possible? Is it possible to what should be done by our society to trash this garbage plan? Because what they're doing is just taking money from America. It sounds to me like just another tax.
Yeah, like basically what's happened is there always used to be a system of public family law because you always had people who would pretty much burden the rest of the community with their care to some extent. Whether it was, the church charity or however it was paid. Or, they would just live a very tough life. But, there were, especially when it came to children is what I'm trying to say, Then what happened is public family law became so emboldened basically that it crossed over into the zone of private family law. And it basically welfareized our original private family law system to where it's like normal middle-class Americans are subject to what's essentially a welfare system for everybody, basically. And it's just I am one of these guys, like, I don't know if we can go backwards in time. Like, if we cut the welfare system, there's going to be some very painful periods for a lot of people. And that means homeless children out on the streets too, and all these kinds of things. Maybe they would finally go with whoever the provider is, because that's who can actually support the kids, right? But I think for a start is if you're not going to push back on the welfare part of family law and put it back in its place to only apply to those people, then at the very least, lean into it more, and you should have a taxpayer-funded custody system for fathers to at least get back in their kids' lives. Why is it that one parent gets to go in there, not have to pay anything for child support, but the other one, when they want to see their kid, they have to pay thousands of dollars in order to do that? That might help at least for some mitigation, but it would still be a huge step towards probably a socialist type of living, which not a lot of people want to do. If you really want to go in the other direction, you have to punish people for breaking up their families, and you have to disincentivize people from having kids outside of wedlock, which means you'd have to, really limit the welfare, or you'd have to look at custody differently and say, okay, well, whatever parent actually makes the money, the kid needs to be there, and you have a legal obligation to take care of that kid. That's what it was before. Like, you can go to jail for not taking care of your child. So however you figure that out, then the child better be in your household. Or, if you're going to get divorced. So a lot of this is wrapped into family law, because my problem is you can't just excise a giant program with millions of dollars running into it and not see immediate devastating consequences, like right in front of your face, basically. Because we're paying all these people to stay out of the way, you can say, through welfare. So if you're going to take a small step back, at least limit the federal child support program's power and say, okay, this only applies again to welfare cases. The minute they're not on welfare
so you're saying
anymore,
right there, then do away with Title 4D then, or modify
Title 4D would still be there, but it would be how it originally started, which was just to recoup the welfare funds, basically. And then you'd have to take away incentive payments for states. Then you would basically say, hey, listen, collect only the welfare monies, at least to start with. It would still be kind of a crappy system, to be honest with you, because there's still family law and all these other issues, and people can go on and off welfare, basically. So it's just so wrapped up into each other. But the problem really is that family law has been taken over by welfare. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you're going to push back on the welfare system, you would then have to change family law again, because the family law system is the welfare system at this point in time.
Wow, man. I mean, because in my mind,
it's so many things rolled up into one. It's like, okay, limit 4D, cut funding for 4D. It's like, okay, well, you can do that, but you're gonna have, welfare at the bottom will probably fall out of that, basically, because you're not recouping a lot of the funds that you otherwise need. And then there's going to be a lot of people who aren't getting that money to at least keep them off the streets, as far as children are concerned, is what I'm talking about here. So you'd either have to just keep paying for that somehow, which they're not going to want to do, because they're going to be like, this is costing the taxpayer. That's how they sold child support in the 90s, was that it cost the taxpayers so much. So they're like, let's get the money from these deadbeat dads, basically. So yeah, it would if you can put the genie back in the bottle, it would be good in the long run if that's gone, because then people would value marriage and look at it differently. If, you know, the alternative was being homeless.
Okay, well, okay. Because I'm like, all right, I got you here tonight. We're going to figure this out. And then we're going to somehow we're going to sell this to the Republicans and the Democrats. We're going to make this law. But okay, so here's the deal.
Mhm.
Could you somehow split the non-welfare families from the welfare families? Could that be done? So in other words, if you have a couple, they have a child,
Mhm.
both parents are individually earning more than the median.
Mhm.
So they will go to a different court.
Well, see, there is no different court now. There used to be a different court, but then
No, we're making it up. Like, could that be done?
yes, that would be private family law court, and there would be more dexterity there for the judge to decide how we should take care of this divorce. They should have a completely different court system from the welfare one. The problem now is that when you go to the private family law court as a non-welfare family, they use the same welfare calculator to do all the math to decide how much you're going to pay.
Right.
So,
and they do that because they need to max out so they can get a bigger rebate. So that's
so when they go to the federal government, they can say, look how well we performed in collecting child support for this many families, basically. Yeah, exactly. So please, give us a better budget for the next year. But when it comes to actual, non-welfare families and say they're going through a divorce, they should have a completely different family law system that applies to them. That could be something that's more at-fault based. What you do have is a revolving door of people there are going to be some people who are on welfare and then they get off, then they go back on. What we do now is for those time periods, they're classified as welfare owed monies, and then the other side is private owed monies. So the money that we collect for the welfare time periods, a portion of that or all of it goes back to the federal government, or it could go to the state, just depending on how they divvy up the money. Then there's the private, which is where, okay, this is the non-welfare time period, and that would go to the custodial party or whoever the money was owed to for that time. So they do divvy it up. They know how much is welfare and how much is non-welfare. The problem is they calculate the number pretty much all the same. So it's like you have just this very rudimentary system. You have like a dump truck coming to move dirt when you should have more finer brushes looking at something, excavating what the problem is here instead of just
you should be
running
sifting through it instead of just
and that's private family law, and that costs that there's a charge for that, cost money for the court's time, and that's why private family law is so expensive with custody. Child support is just designed to be this fast thing. Mm-hmm.
If I could jump in here real quick. So if you did have the private family law system, so you have
we technically see, this is what's really confusing about it. We technically do have a private family law court. So your county has a private family law court, and then it has the child support publicly funded court. The problem is they've mixed all the laws up to where the private family law court judge is going to say, okay, let's see what guideline child support is, which is the welfare calculator, essentially.
So it should be two calculated. So with this, if you had the non-welfare cases going through that system, wouldn't that then be the incentive for those two individuals to just work it out themselves? Because, like, look, we got to pay. Yeah,
otherwise they got to go through private family law, and it's going to take time. And they should be looking at it with a lot more dexterity and a lot more of a finer tooth comb to say what does justice actually look like in this case for these two people who are possibly looking at divorce, versus we don't have time for justice. We just need to give you the Happy Meal cookie cutter judgment here based off the calculator. And it used to be like that. There used to be a private family law, which is you'd go into court and it would take time and it would take money, but they would get to something that was more fair. Then it just became this, we have to just get this out mass industrial style. We got to get all these Twinkies made and just bam, packaged, put on the shelf. We need all these child support orders fast. We don't have time to do this, basically.
What's funny? I'm sitting here thinking, and for all you red pillars out here watching, for all you bottom 80 guys, you invisible dudes, and even you top 20 guys, this is the real red pill information y'all need to be studying, because this is more than likely going to happen when you finally become visible to women and women want to be with you and you guys want to sleep together, and she promises you that she's like I'm on the IUD or I'm on the pill or I'm on whatever, you don't need to wear that no more. This is what's going to happen. So you really need to understand how this works. There's so many red pill guys want to skip this part. It's like, you cannot skip this part. This is what you need to know.
That's the scary part. And what you mentioned earlier about always winning. That's the part, where you get too comfortable. That's what I mean with the Matador thing, and you step in a giant pile of poo, And then I saw news recently where Trump, I don't know if it was true, someone sent it to me, but the Trump administration was looking at being able to revoke passports as far as child support goes. Yeah. Now, they can go after your passport already. I think the difference is if you have a passport, say it expires in 10 years, if they go after and they put a hold on the passport, your passport will work till it expires, right? But the revoking of a passport is different. That means like from day one, your passport is literally revoked, and then you have to go and pay this off and then apply for another one. So, it doesn't seem like the Trump administration is concerned with changing much as far as this goes, but no, I think neither of the administrations have been. So, because again, the problem with it is it's just not an easy sell. It's this. You know what I mean? So it's like, again, the minute they pull out one of these things from the system, it's going to look horrible when there's a bunch of, homeless kids out there and stuff like that.
Man, do you know who the fat electrician is? Have you ever heard of him?
No, I haven't. It's a YouTuber?
YouTuber, very successful YouTuber. I'll send you some of his videos. Okay. He focuses on military and like military history. So like Audie Murphy, Congressional Medal of Honor winner, Sergeant Alvin York, and like one of the first, congressional, well, not one of the first, but Congressional Medal of Honor winner in World War I. When he talks about these, like the first fighter aces and all these like tough dudes who went and did these amazing things in combat, almost all of them had the same story. They came from a huge family. They had no money. These kids would go out, like Alvin York would go out with his little, 22 rifle and would shoot possums and squirrels. And that's how they ate. And the kid was shooting so good, like he just couldn't miss. And went on to become one of America's greatest heroes. And again, they were all poor. They didn't know who their dads were when most of the time. Like mom wasn't really bringing any money, or the parents were home. They just weren't making enough money. Kids dropping out of high school. So when you say like it's going to be trouble, I'm thinking like, well, maybe we'll just get the next generation of great American heroes.
Yeah, that's a great perspective on that. That's true. I mean, yeah, and I did say this earlier, but like in the interim short period, it will be very rough. But people are going to have to start taking things more seriously. Can I can't show the comment on your screen, but I can show it on mine. But I have this person worked with me at child support, and he's been there for way longer than I have. But he says he worked with me, and he says, I hate the current setup. 50-50 should be default. Paternity testing should be required prior to any voluntary paternity declaration. And the child support figure should not be based on either party's income. So it's like that would do away with the whole calculator as we know it today. It would be based off need of the child. So you'd actually have to find justice in the situation. But the problem is like they have this very cookie cutter industrialized version of child support, which is just about getting the order the fastest so we could start getting the money the fastest. Meanwhile, you're still trying to fight for custody. You know what I mean? And now child support's coming out of there.
I mean, if it's default 50-50, and then again, let's say let's use, California, like you're in, Los Angeles County. Mm-hmm. The median cost to raise a child in Los Angeles County is X. We're just making up numbers here. Let's say it's
that's what should be the cap on the child support. The cap should be no more than what welfare is expended on the child support. Like if welfare only is going to give you this many hundreds of dollars, then if that's the max there, then if you're going to no fault leave your husband, or the provider, whether it's woman or man, and you're going to take the children on a no fault, you should not get more than what welfare is going to give, and they should not charge that person more. And if you can't handle it, then fine, give it back to the actual household that you broke up. You know what I mean? With the person who actually makes the money at that point. So, that's what I mean. There's so many things wrapped up. It's like there's the no fault. There's the incentives built into the child support system and how the state is funded, from federal dollars. in order to do this. So it's like pulling out one of these blocks from this whole thing. It can create a bad short-term disaster, but you're right. In the long term, it would be better because people would be a lot more serious about reproduction.
Yeah, it changes the game.
Yeah.
So people in that field, I mean, this conversation has been had, or people talk about this, because my thing is, if it costs $300,000 from age 0 to 18 to raise a child where you are,
It's 300
then
now.
each
Huh?
parent-
I remember when it was 250.
just making up numbers.
It's,
Yeah, just
it's
making
about
up numbers.
250 the last time I looked at it, but that was probably, almost a year ago.
So each parent, in my mind, will be responsible for $125,000, right?
Yeah, you could say that, but the thing is the government's looking at, you have a kid right now that needs to be fed that they'd rather not have on the welfare rolls, so to speak. So even if you paid the $150,000 this month and said, okay, I paid my 150, and the money all blew in the wind tomorrow, and now you have this hungry kid here, they're still going to be like, you have an obligation to support this child, and that 150 didn't count. But I hear what you're saying. The 300,000, I think, figures in college and stuff like that.
Whoa. Hold on. Wait. You mean to tell me the government would say, if I gave the government all of the money that they ordered me to pay in child support up front?
You can't pay child support up front. Like, look, I get what you're saying. In a what if scenario. Yeah, there's no such thing. There was a story, I think it was like about a year ago. I remember Coach covering it, and it was about this guy who, it was like some viral child support story. Yeah, he was like, I'm going to pay $60K up front in child support, but there's no such thing as doing that. If you do that, the rest of the money above the month is just a gift to the other person at that point. Because again, there's a living, breathing child, and they're going to say, no, we want the money on time every month in order for this child. Otherwise, if you pay $60K up front and the money blows in the wind, they're not going to be like, well, too bad, you shouldn't have spent that, Mom. They're going to be like, there's a starving child here, let's get the money from Dad.
But and their first instinct, in my mind, I'm thinking the government is responsible for that money blowing in the wind. I mean, because it's like the government is forcing people to pay this money.
I think I know what the issue is. That 60,000, and then especially in that example, that would go into the custodial party's hands. If it's welfare, if it's money that's owed to welfare, they can never collect 60,000 from you. They can only collect what's been expended. So you wouldn't be able to just give 60,000 to the government because they wouldn't have the right to just take that money. The 60,000 up front is giving it to the child's mother, basically, and saying, here's 60K. But that doesn't count as far as like the child support system goes.
And Brother Damon's in the building. What's good, fam? He was asking, was that Anthony Edwards we were talking about earlier? I don't think we were talking about Anthony Edwards, but I think Anthony Edwards wanted to pay his child support up front, all of it. Now, could you do that through,
maybe it was Anthony Edwards. Yeah, I couldn't remember his name. Was that football or basketball? I can't even remember now.
I can't remember. But now I'm starting to really understand the point you were making about everything being all weaved in together. So again, because when I'm talking, what I'm noticing in this conversation is I'm coming from a point of view that I'm talking about two parents who are financially capable of raising a kid on their own if they had to. You're coming from, all right, one of the parents is getting assistance. And now it's like, I see what you're saying. Because if I'm dealing with a woman, we have a child, we're not married, we're both making $100,000 a year.
Yeah, that would be a better place to, if you were going to have a child with somebody, I would go that direction versus with the direction of someone not making money. And then you're not cohabitating anymore, and now she goes directly on welfare. If she's making 100K and you're making 100K, it's going to be a lot simpler in court. Custody is going to be the primary thing to focus on, basically.
And the court will still want to issue some sort of order because they want to get some money, even if it's just a little bit. Maybe it's like, all right, you're getting $600 a month out of one of these two.
Well, if it's 50-50,
because of the guidelines.
If it's 50-50 and you both make 100,000, child support would be effectively zero. The guideline would spit out zero because it would say you both make the same money, so you got the same lifestyle in each house, and you each have the child to half the amount of time. Child support ordered is zero. There's no welfare involved, right? Welfare means someone probably lost their job or whatever, but you're both making 100K. you both have the kids 50-50, you both pay for your own childcare in that time, then the order, truly the guideline would say it's 0.
Can we run one more guideline, brother?
Yeah,
Would
I
that
got
be
it up
okay?
right here.
Can we run a guideline where, let's say, parent one is making?
My bad. I got to pull it back up. I X'd out of it. But
Oh,
don't worry.
it's
But
all
yeah,
good.
go and tell me the scenario. Child support.
Let's say parent one is making $175,000.
Okay. let's see.
Parent two
And this is California.
is making.
just
Okay, yes,
to
it's
be
definitely
clear
just
for
California.
the viewers. And
For
how
the-
many
we're doing
children?
California. One child.
One child. Okay.
Parent two is making $135,000.
Okay. Just real quick though, can you just sorry, I forgot how much you said for parent
175 for parent one. 175
Okay.
for parent one.
175K for parent one annually. Okay. And parent two?
135. Let's say 135.
135. Okay.
One child.
One child
50-50 split.
50-50. All right, let's do that. All right.
I'm guessing. I'm thinking parent one is going to have to pay $300 a month.
Might be a
guessing.
little higher than that, but you might
You
actually
think?
be
Okay.
right. You might actually be right. Let's see.
And guys, if you're watching,
Oh no,
this,
it's
we're not
less.
putting in
Look,
all of the
it's
information.
less. 171 a month. So this is
171.
yeah. This is 50-50 with 175 versus 135 annual. Yeah, so 170. So see, and this is why I'm always making a big deal about like looking at what the other person has on paper, because when it gets to this situation, that's 50-50. Now, you will see, let's see, let's just put in 0% custody. So say one person has the child 100% of the time. Just to show you what the number would be there.
0% custody.
Then
for
it's
one-
18. Then it goes from
175?
$171 to $1,802. See, now it's closer to the guy that was making 100K. He would have been paying a
Right.
little over 2,000. But since you have 0% custody and you're making 175, the other person's income, I think, factors in a little bit, and they're high income too. Otherwise, I think it. Let me just double check. But
That's
yeah,
still pretty high.
but you see how
would
big
say-
of a difference it went from 50%
Yeah.
to 0,
Yeah.
from $171 to, and if they were
Was it
making,
1,800?
so listen, if it was 0% custody, it would be 1,800 in that scenario. Now, if you're making 175K and she's making 0 and it's 0% custody, then you would pay $2,419.
Damn.
Even with and it's still 0% custody. So her income, even with 0% custody, still has a factor into what the fact that she has income, even though it's 0 custody, you would still pay less than if she makes no money. See that?
The system is so jacked up. So this is how I would do it.
Mhm.
And guys, I'm nobody. I'm a retired air traffic controller who is sitting in his loft talking to a camera. All right. So I'm nobody, guys. Shaw is the pro. Like Shaw is the pro. So, but here's the thing. I would say if you had no marriage, we're talking about a custody case, no one's been married.
Yeah, you guys just had a child together outside of wedlock.
You guys just had a child together.
Mhm.
You both earn over the median household income for America. Not individual, but household. Let's say you both earn
Over
today is
70K or
right around.
something. Yeah.
Well, I think it's up to like almost 86 now.
Okay.
But it's still under 90,000. It's still under 90K.
Okay.
But it's still real low considering the median house is what, 425,000. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. But if individually you earn over that benchmark, then you come to court, it's 50-50 custody. There is no money changing hands.
Yeah, there shouldn't be a need.
That's what I think should happen.
Yeah, and that's kind of
There's
what
no need.
Orem was saying earlier, because he was saying it shouldn't be based off of the parents' incomes, but yeah, then it would be based off need for the child, because what you're saying. I mean, I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but what you're saying is you're over that minimum amount of what a child needs at the minimum. You're over that poverty line and you even overshot it a bit too, where each household has about that. So yeah. It really isn't, because at that point, each parent's lifestyle is their own and the child's needs are met. So what you're basically discussing is a needs-based system for that, instead of a lifestyle-based system where they do that. That's always been one of my biggest sort of hangups with it too. is that it's based off this lifestyle thing. This is what incentivizes the predatory sort of behavior amongst people. It's like if it wasn't that way and you weren't entitled to someone's lifestyle, then they would think about wanting to leave or not. And if they did leave, which they're free to do, you don't get to leave with the lifestyle. That's what so much of these people are, unhappy about when it comes to this space.
Yes. And then in same scenario, let's say, let's change the scenario up a little bit.
Mhm.
So now you have one earner, you got one person who's making, twice what making, I'm getting tired. You got one
Don't
person
worry.
who's making more than the median household income, right?
Okay. So
that person
maybe
is
like
making basically
90?
he's basically earning for two people, right? So you got one person,
90,000?
now you say,
Because you
let's
said
call
a
it
little above, right? Or
90. Yeah,
how much?
so let's call it 90.
90.
So
okay.
let's say there you're making above that. It was like, I think it's around 86. But
Okay.
you're like, so you got one person who's making more than the median household income.
Okay. So parent one,
other person-
90,000.
Right. And the other parent, right? The other parent is making the median individual income. So the other parent is making like 50,000, 55,000, something
Mhm.
like that.
55.
I would say in that case, we go to the cap. So it's like, all right, the parent who's making the money, it's a 50-50 split. The parent who's making the money is going to pay up to the cap, the child support cap. So that's when you look in, all right, it costs, we'll say 200,000 now. It costs $200,000 to raise a child from 0 to 18. That parent is responsible for half of that, $100,000 to be paid monthly for 18 years.
Well, yeah, the 200,000 figure I think is above just the base needs of the child. I think that figures in a lot more. Just to be clear about that. You know what I mean? So I think that figures in more than the base needs. So I think that figure is actually kind of high, but I understand the logic behind what you're saying. That would be the max they can get from you for child support. If you were, I will tell you this: if it was a 90, if one parent was making 90,000, the other was making 55, and it was 0% custody, parent one would pay $1,383 a month. So, I don't have my calculator, but if you were gonna do the math, and we're assuming from 0 years of age,
Yeah. From 0 to 18.
yeah. So, okay, 12 times 1383. So that's 1 year is 16,596 times 18 is 298,728. So that's far above your cap of 200,000. So your cap I see is still less. And I'm still saying that that's even above the needs. But at least the basic needs. But
and see, that's my whole point.
Yeah.
We know what it costs. And the government has their numbers. They do what? Every 7 to 10 years, ag does that. They put the numbers out. Department of Agriculture, I think.
I'm not sure about the frequency of how often they do that.
I think it's every 7 to 10 years. The last time I checked, it was a long time ago when I checked that. But I mean, they might be doing it more often now. I don't know. But here's the thing: if you looked it up right now, if you type,
I'll do that right now. How much does it cost to raise a child in? You want to do California since we're using the California guideline?
How much does it cost to raise a child in America? And now they'll give a break, or you can say per state. They give breakdowns. I want to say Maine is the most expensive place to raise a child. I think 0 to 18. I think it's like 300,000. That's the most expensive place in America.
So,
if I'm not mistaken.
Raising it. This is just the AI overview, guys. So maybe we shouldn't take it too seriously. Raising a child in California is among the most expensive in the U.S., with annual costs averaging over $30,000 to $35,000 a child as of 25. Total costs over 18 years can exceed $500,000 in high-cost areas like San Francisco and San Jose. So that still seems a little high. I mean, San Francisco. I mean, if you take an average of that, it's probably going to be maybe like 400,000, which I still think is pretty high. But let's just say, okay, it's 400,000 in California. I still think I think your 300,000, I think the 250 to 300,000 is more realistic, because I think this stuff factors in lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like versus base needs. And it's like, if you're going to destroy your household, then lifestyle shouldn't be more than what's above the basic needs of the child.
Because you always come from the, it's a divorce involved. And I'm always coming from, no, these are just two people who met and had a baby. They were never married. So, and I agree with, if it was a marriage involved, I agree with what you're saying. There should be a cost to that. And I think that's why the divorce rate is so high to begin with.
Yeah.
But when two people just have a kid, and especially in a society where one of those two people got to choose.
Well, see, and this is the most important thing. That's why I keep looking at the front end of marriage so much, because it's like what deal you're entering into is going to determine a lot of the stuff on the back end. But you know, the TradCon mythos here is the man is the penultimate provider. The woman shouldn't have to worry about anything. Should be a stay-at-home mom, frankly, ideally for them. So you're entering into this deal where you're agreeing to pay everything, and she's not working or doing that. So you're going to get it shafted here in court. You have to expect that going in at this point. It's like, at this point, I'm like, guys, you can't, there's no more surprises now. The prior generations were the guys that got surprised. I think they did their part to tell everybody what it was like. At this point, you got to start looking at it more pragmatically and strategically, you know, about if you're going to do this, because, you know, people do want to have kids. I'd like to believe that and think about that. It's like, okay, what am I going to, you know, we were talking earlier here about how everybody in their little fantasy has to put up with some reality. You know what I mean? And it's like, you might have to make some concessions in some points in order to find somebody who might bring a little bit more to the table to mitigate for some of these disasters. And if it's going to end up in a divorce, which is a high likelihood it would, then at least the divorce could be smoother. Then you guys can go about your lives if you want to be a matador again or whatever it happens to be.
Right. You want to get back into that ring.
But be careful.
Again. I mean, because I think what James Saxton preaches, I agree with. I think if you want to get married, part of the marriage package, like your marriage license and all that, part of that should include a prenuptial agreement, an agreement that both parties come up with and they sign, and that's the agreement that they stick to. Get divorced, we're going by this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, you know, the prenup, I look at the prenup as essentially you guys, having that conversation is good, and it does kind of, to me, call to memory the old marriage contract discussion that people would have when they were making that deal. It doesn't stop hypergamy, but it does give you a shield. You're basically saying, I'm accepting that I'm entering into a hypergamous deal. We're both accepting this as hypergamy. And this is what we're going to do to mitigate for that. The old school dowry system was different because it solved hypergamy by matching women with high dowries with high status men, and this created a even match going down. So that solves the problem of hypergamy, and you need to do that, I think, in order to have a thriving civilization. Otherwise, what you're going to have is a bunch of unmarried people who live like nomads, and it's going to be up to the government to provide for everybody, and you might have the giant herd of people and then the ultra-rich technocrat class, and people are laborers and they own nothing. You know what I mean? And then on the other end, the government does that. So we're kind of swinging in between these two extremes here.
I think we should. I don't mind that. Even Brother Damon on my side, he's like 27 plus years married. One child is 21. Hey, bro, that's a Don DeMarco if I ever heard it. You won.
Yeah,
and I say this every time he's on the platform. Don DeMarco to you, bro.
Shout out to him.
You know, ideally, we would like to see more couples get that sort of success, but it's just really difficult to do. And that's another thing, too. I think the Disney fairy tale narrative have people thinking that being married is easy. And that's something else that Andrew Wilson didn't bring up. You didn't get to see it. Make sure it's like, I'm gonna have to tap out here pretty soon.
No, it's okay.
Like about to fall asleep.
Yeah.
But when you watch the rest of that debate, they talk about marriages and happiness and what people were expecting going in, and it did get really good.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe I'll have to just react to it on probably next week. I'll have to finish it, or we can always do a part 2 or something. I know it's late for you because I stream at 7 and you're 3 hours ahead. So
it's all good.
I don't blame you, man. Don't trip.
Had I known, I would have, I'd have planned accordingly. But even
that's
Brother
what made
Davis,
it fun,
like,
man.
he belleast in prenups today.
Yeah,
bro.
If you're going to do that, you should at least do that. I'm not going to guarantee it won't get thrown out, but at least it will force the conversation about that. And I think the conversation about that might at least draw out some other things about this person you're thinking about getting married to. I'll tell you, when I first started at child support, there was this lady who worked there. She might still work there. Shout out to her. But she was funny, but she'd always say to anybody thinking about getting married, I can almost hear her voice. She'd say, make sure you see their credit report. Do not marry anybody without looking at their credit report. Which is
hilarious. Like, what credit score do they need? Like, what? Like,
well, credit score, but also how much debt do you have to your name, and just all these kinds of things. Because, all that stuff, once you get, like, and, it's crazy because looking in the past, people used to quite literally look at all that stuff and they'd say, okay, like, what is this person coming with? How much do they have? How much is their prospective career expected to make them? Okay, so they just became a doctor, but they need a medical practice. Okay, we're going to use her dowry for the house and the medical practice, and that's going to water, him a bit to grow into this flourishing doctor with the practice, and he's going to provide for her and the children, at that point. That's the deal, and that's how it made sense. That's literally, there's so many examples of this in the history. I'd love to share them with you someday. I think that'd be a fun stream.
We should definitely do that, man. And I look forward to it, man, because I'll stream with you as much as you want, man.
Yeah.
Especially the late night ones, because I'm chill. I'm here anyway. I'm co-parenting. My daughter's gone normally on the weekends. I would say this, like in the 10 minutes or so that we have left before I pass out, I would say that I guess I would ask you, is there any way, with your experience, your professional mind, knowing that side of the life, is there any way to do away with allowing the court to decide? I mean, because I hear what you're saying about the welfare part.
The thing is the court decides on so much stuff that's outside of marriage. I know you're not asking about marriage specifically, but when it concerns children, property, and all these very real, tangible things here, we have legal frameworks that are specifically made to address those things. So it's like, and prenups don't even apply to children. There was no such thing as a prenup. The child support agency I was at, we did not care about prenups. That doesn't matter what you put in there. Doesn't apply to children. And, again, you can try to have a good prenup. The court's still going to be in your life one way or another. Even with the prenup, they might try to challenge the prenup. That's going to cost money. So no matter, you're going to have to get some kind of custody order. Say you're not married, right? You guys were cohabitating, or even if you're not cohabitating, you have a child. Unless you guys really can work it out and you're just these two amazing, mature people, that'd be fantastic. But other than that, you'll probably need a custody order. There'll probably be a child support order if, things don't work out between you guys and one person starts to not feel good about it. Typically happens when somebody gets in a new relationship or something like that. Yep. So no matter what, the court is going to be in your life unless you guys really could figure it out. But I would never sell that as a possibility, because that's very, that typically would happen. That possibility would happen if you guys are both making very decent income and are both just very concerned, like, all right, I don't want your retirement. He doesn't want my retirement. When we'll just do 50-50 when she's here with me, or when he's here with me, and when they're with you, and it's fine. Those people can figure it out. But those people, are in a different position. You know what I mean? But if you're going to play the TradCon game and I'm providing and I'm Mr. Masculine over here, like, this is what you can expect as the court in your life,
Yep. And like Brother Damon said, emotions screw everything up. That is a fact. So, so here's the takeaway, gentlemen. If you're out there, you're watching us, you're in the red pill world, you're in the metal swamp, wherever you are, or you're a blue pill guy who just stumbled onto this conversation. Getting married in America, you're doing two things. You're signing, if you have something, right, you're signing a deal, a contract that can be easily broken by the other person, and they're going to extract from you. That's the first thing. And I think the second thing is you're giving yourself, you're giving your family, and you're giving the government the opportunity to just decide what's going to happen with your money. And if you're cool with that, and you've done your research and you understand that's what you're risking, and you still want to get married, man, go do you. I ain't mad at you. Congratulations. I hope it works. But for those guys who are on this Disney fairy tale thing and they think they're going to live happily ever after and this is going to be like the perfect scenario, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, my friend. So Andrew Wilson, Andrew Wilson's a real smart guy. He understands that, but he's a religious zealot, and he's pushing for religion. And I ain't mad at him. Just understand that's what he's pushing. And Rich Cooper is a businessman who's been through the divorce court, the family law system in Canada, which is even worse than it is down here. And he's just trying to tell you what I'm trying to tell you. Learn the rules of the game, because you're playing this game. You chose to play this game. And if you get wrecked, it's your fault. You can't be mad at nobody else. What are your final thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that. I just want to add on, aside from marriage inviting the state into your life, any act of reproduction you do, even if it's outside of marriage, it's like you're signing a contract with the state as far as family codes go for children and you being the father. And yes, they will have you in court and looking at your income and expecting and having all that be out there. So they're going to look through that with a fine comb. So when you engage in any of that, you are inviting the court into your life. As far as the Andrew Wilson, Rich Cooper debate, I agree with you. Andrew Wilson is very intelligent. And, I just wish there would be more focus on what, the outset of the marriage looks like. Because I think there's this kind of simple hand waving of the man provides and the woman is supposed to do these things, nurturing or whatever it happens to be. But I think we need to revisit that and look at that more deeply to see, so men can not feel like they're not being masculine by expecting more of a contribution at the outset of the marriage, at the establishment of the household. That's what marriage used to be. And that's how this entire program of marriage was created. And it wasn't until very recently that was abandoned for whatever this new ethos was. So Andrew Wilson's trying very hard to sell marriage, but I think he needs to focus more on the beginning and the outset of the marriage and the very real, tangible, and economic setup of the household.
Yeah, because he's definitely selling marriage, but it's religious marriage. Like he's selling religion as well. I think it's a 50-50 split there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably worked for him. But fellas, be careful. That's all I'm saying. Do your homework. It's just like brother Damien was saying right here, man. Do your homework up front. Do your risk assessment and be realistic about it, man. So Brother Shaw, man, I appreciate, man. This was fun.
I'm glad you hit me up. I know it was spur of the moment, but I was like, I got to make this happen. And it's, I'm sure the folks enjoyed it.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please tell everybody where they can find you, brother.
This is Shaw YouTube channel, or this is Shaw _ all one word there on Twitter. So Twitter or YouTube, two best places.
There you go. You guys know where to find me because we're over here doing this. I'm on Instagram as well. I really want to know podcast. I have a Gumroad page that I just set up. DL Saint on Gumroad. You can come find me over there. Best way to support is to buy some of the ebooks. And I appreciate all of my day ones coming through. Brother Ian dropping the super chat. Brother Damien, appreciate you. Shaw, don't go nowhere, man. Just hang out backstage. Remember, do the outro.
No worries. I'll close my stream too once we do our outro. Or actually, I can just mute it. No, I should probably close my stream. We'll close it at the same time so we can chat a bit. Don't worry.
That's what's up, man. So I'm about to run the outro, man. I really appreciate y'all support, man. Thank you so much. I'm DL Saint. This is I Really Want to Know podcast. I'm out of here. Peace.
Nothing like I've ever seen. It's just a thing of beauty.
Guys, I'm just going to cut stream, but thanks everybody for being here. And next week, we'll get back to the regular programming, but I hope you guys enjoyed that tonight. Shout out Klaus, Orem, username, Dan the Man, all the other folks, Luke Nielsen, Mr. Pitt. And I appreciate y'all hanging out tonight. So I got to get you guys some more standalones. We got some fun stuff coming in a few weeks that I think you'll enjoy. Shout out, y'all.